Dr. Rhea Ashur signs the order because the graphs won't stop rising. The warp is bleeding into their world as memes and nightmares, and only a preemptive quarantine can stop a K-class cascade. Project Janus answers with math as ritual. A ring of Scranton reality anchors, a pataphysical bridge key to the gravest story nearby. They choose the theatre by crime scene logic, most leak, highest pressure, an empire ruled by a throne and an ocean of thought. The breach opens like a pupil dilating. Night peels back over a forge world called Graia, and the first thing the sky tastes is steel dust and machine oil. The new star is wrong. It is a braided ring of dark machinery, a halo clamped around nothing, spitting frost and math into vacuum. Within that ring hangs a fortress of matte facets and segmented bays. Theta-Site JANUS, a mobile containment arc threaded with cables the color of arterial blood. Sirens ripple across the hive spires and manufactoria. Servo skulls pivot in flocks to stare. On Habstack, Sigma 4, Lissa, the line worker, stops her press and looks up through a slit window. The aurora that bursts from the ring is not color, but intent. Her teeth ache. Her Auspex charm rattles. Down in the sump, a sump diver sees the reflection in oil and whispers a prayer. The Vox screams with machine cunt as tech priests scramble to assign the new star a designation and a blessing. Inside Theta-Site, Janus, Commander Marcus Alvarez, floats in a mag sling at the main viewport, checking the rifle clamps of MTF Nu 7. His visor, HUD, marches numbers, cunt counters, Hume gradients, local baseline drift. The bridge crew is quiet, precise, tired in the way of people who have rehearsed catastrophe. Dr. Ashur watches the world below with a face made of decisions. "We're at insertion," says Cade, SRA engineer. Voice clipped. Local baseline Hume is anomalously low, expected. Warp pressure measured pseudometrically. Pattern blue storms everywhere. Our anchors don't like this ocean. They don't have to like it, Dr. Ashur says. They have to hold. Grav guns cough. The arc slides down on a spine of gravity that lands above the equatorial manufactorum band, like a talon poised to seize, but not yet closing. Around it, the ring turns. It is not a wheel, so much as a rosary of doubts. Each anchor module is a prayer about reality and a threat to anything that thrives in distortion. Ripples spread. Their shadows deform refinery smoke into straight lines. Graia's defense grid wakes, blinking like a dragon with bad wiring. Macro batteries load shells stamped with catechisms. The vox of the planetary governor breaks into control channels between bursts of liturgy from the tech priests. Unidentified asset in low orbit, the governor's aide reads. Maintain targeting solutions. Await Inquisitorial sanction. The sanction arrives as a spear of gold. A cruiser's prow sigil, double-headed eagle crowned, cuts in across the ark's bow. Battlefleet Graia, cruiser Magnificat, guns ready. And with it, a smaller craft rises from the planet, a blade of slate and brass. Inquisitorial pinnace approaching, reports Uma Jindal of Anti-Memetics, eyes on the noospheric feed. Heraldry points to Ordo Malleus. Best manners, everyone. On the surface, the ocean of thought stirs. It is not the foundation that makes it churn. They are a stone, and the ocean hates stones. From the hive's basal levels, where forgotten shrines weep oil, a crack of cold opens, sharp like a scream behind a door. Graia has scars left by a war that never quite ends. A ritual gnaws on one. The first diamond pulls itself through like a glove inside out. It is red with the idea of red, a weapon that thinks it is a man. Others follow, lesser and greater, names carved into them by worship and fear. Alarms moan, hab units rip away like wet paper. Contact, Alvarez says. We're here. The arc moves. Hatches iris. Drop coffins spit from the hull like hail. JANUS 7 rides them down, shells of ablative charm foam burning, SRAs in tow like black altars on grav sleds. Other teams peel off, ETA 10 with polarized occlusion visors to see things that don't want to be seen, Beta 7, hazmat specialists with reliquary canisters, Lambda 4 with guns that shoot sanctified salt. The rest of the Foundation's languages come too. Logisticians, medics, theologians, engineers, all fluent in emergencies. They hit the roof of a factorum like teeth. Steel buckles. Alvarez kicks his coffin open and stands into heat, his armor drinking cinders. The demon turns in 3 directions at once to look at him. It is holding a worker as if learning weight. Anchor, Alvarez says. Cade and 2 operators plant the first Scranton reality anchor at the stairhead. It wakes with a sound like a dial being turned toward true. The air crystallizes. The demon screams without a mouth because its mouth is part of why it exists. Its edges start to lose the right to be there. The people who are running stumble back into their bodies, suddenly heavier and definite. A little boy with a metal prayer wheel falls and scrapes his hand, and the pain is real, and he sobs with relief because reality itself has stopped being slippery. Radiant pattern dropping, Jindal calls over the net. Warp pressure deflecting. Hume spike localized. Hold the line and widen. Demons are not lines. They are solutions searching for problems. They adapt. A second one leaps, blades like certainty, and hits the fringe of the anchor's field. Its body becomes brittle and then not, as it learns to vibrate in another argument about being. Alvarez steps into the argument with steel and math. His team fires, every 3rd round an apotropaic round inscribed by a printer that believes in prayer because a human told it to. Who are you? A voice asks over hissing vox again and again, layered with angels and scorn, and then clean, a woman's voice, cold and clear. This is Inquisitor Les Invoke. You appear unregistered. Identify or be annihilated. We are the SCP Foundation, Dr. Ashur answers from orbit. Voice dry. We're here to secure, contain, and protect your civilians from the things you hunt. We can talk while we work. You will consent to immediate inspection, Vogue says, and submit to judgment after. Otherwise, every gun I have speaks. Inspection accepted, Ashur says. Judgment deferred until not bleeding. Commander, give them what you always give. Results. Roger, Alvarez says. He moves. He is not unafraid. Fear is a measure of how much someone cares about the future. He is professionally committed to having one. The second anchor slams into the street below, planted by a pair of drones that look like coffins with hands. They lock themselves to the bedrock with anchors that are literal. They bite. Their field overlaps the first. The demon weaving between them hits the stitch and frays. It comes apart into the ideas that make it, and those ideas go their separate ways in the wind. The tech priests watching through lenses sizzle with binhuric awe and dread. Their machine spirits sniff at the anchors and find no incense, no cant. The anchors talk in numbers without reverence. It is the first heresy the Foundation commits. Truth without liturgy. Emergency corridors opening. Alvarez reports. Civilians moving. We need medivac and psionic dampers in 3 blocks. He steps over a brass icon smashed into stairs by a panicked crowd and doesn't think about it because he has room in his head only for paths, angles, and the rhythm of firing. Down in the sump, a Skittery Ranger, designation Alpha 3, lines up a shot on a diamond and watches it refuse to be where he aims. His auspex stutters. His flesh mind, iron discipline, wonders how to write a prayer for a thing that insists it is not there. Then the air thumps. The anchor field peels the world straight, and the diamond is where bullets say home is. Alpha 3 fires once. He files a prayer of thanks to the cold altar he does not understand. The first fight is fast enough to steal breath and long enough to make memory. When it is over, the building's corners look sharper than they should. The dead are dead. The living keep moving, as if the ground might remember a slippery trick and grease itself again. Codex note: a Scranton reality anchor injects stability by imposing a calibrated Hume field, collapsing warp-favorable gradients and forcing phenomena to resolve to local physical law within its radius. The Inquisitorial pinnace hammers into a docking cradle on Theta-Site JANUS like a hammer into a promise. Gilded seals flare, maglocks snap. Inquisitor Voke steps through with a retinue. Storm-coated henchman, a robed psyker with a blank mask, a sister of silence whose presence walks like frost. They are weapons with names. On the bridge, Ashur stands with hands clasped behind her back as if the deck were her parish. She is smaller than the idea of director, which helps her. People expect gods. She is only a woman, very tired. You are not Adeptus anything, Vogue says. Her eyes take in the consoles, the glass of the viewport, the ring that orbits like a prediction. She tastes the math and finds blasphemy she doesn't have a word for. You will declare your origin. Not from your Imperium, Ashur says. From a nearby narrative where monsters such as yours leak and we contain them. Your war pushes on our doors. Our mandate is to stop K-class end-of-the-world scenarios. One of them wears your heraldry. We crossed because not crossing kills people. Heraldry, Vogue repeats, amused and offended. This is not heraldry. This is reality. Agreed, Ashur says. Hence the anchors. The psyker in Vogue's train shifts and moans. He has blood at his nose. The ring's effect, even this high, hurts him. The sister of silence glances, and the psyker calms as his talent goes out like a candle near an open window. The sister's eyes flick to the rotating halo of black machines, and something like interest lives there for a second. She recognizes a cousin of what she is, a place where the warp lacks grip. It is written, Vogue says, that those who arrive with new gods are enemies, and you are none of ours. Dr. Ashur nods once. We have no gods, only procedures. Until you tell me to stop, I will keep civilians alive while we talk. Good, Vogue says, surprising herself a little, because she meant to say no. She turns the word over and decides there is utility in later exits. Do not touch holy things without consent, and if I smell demonic lies on you, I burn your star. Accepted, Ashur says, her own turn inward, an acknowledgement of new constraints. In the habs below, Alvarez's helmet displays civilian names as tags as they pass through the anchor lattice. Lisa, Orin, boy with prayer wheel. Alpha 3, tagged by friendly IFF handshake that does not quite handshake. Names await. Each one is why the rifle points where it does. A ripple of cheers travels like a rumor, then dies, replaced with a shiver that has no sound. Lights flicker. Several people fall to their knees and press their foreheads to the floor. The air tastes like hot copper. The Foundation net throws up hazard glyphs so bright they burn after images. Incoming wave, Jindal says. Not local, something from orbit. On Graia's night side, a lintel of black stone is turning in a field of wrong light. It is not natural to this world. It was brought here because hatred and industry build together easily. The word-bearer's warband, called the Chorus of the Unbound, have braced their ship with plates of noctili, blackstone that drinks the warp, not to deny it, but to shape it like clay with cold hands. Their dark apostle prays in the voice of factories, and the crown they ring around their ship is a sermon that opens paths. The first wave was a leak, an old wound the world forgot. The second is a spear aimed by men. It comes down like rain that harms ideas first. Macro batteries on Graia fire at it, because that is what a world knows how to do to the sky. The shots turn into long thoughts and go nowhere. The spear hits atmosphere and becomes a cloud of doors. Under each door is a shape with a name that used to be a man's. Anchor lattice is about to be stress tested, Kate says, her hands dancing. If we widen, we burn fuel. If we tighten, we lose ground. How long can the Janus ring sustain current throughput? Ashur asks. Hours at present rates, Kate says. If we expand field coverage to city scale and sustain, we eat the bridges charged to the bone. Recharging here is not friendly. Their crown is noctilith, Jindal says. Blackstone. It drinks warp the wrong way. It lets them write on it. We write no with our anchors. They write no to your no. Clever. Options, Ashur says. Take their crown, Jindal says. Or break it. Or get them to spend it where we can kill it with fags. On the ground, Alvarez says, voice lower, eyes tracking data lines that are now smoke trails. Civilians are still inside expanding corridors. We can't fall back without leaving them to that. We don't fall back, Ashur says. We widen. Cade, give him one more ring. Buy me an inspection. Vogue laughs, a sudden crack of ice. You asked to expand your heresy by appealing to my dislike for dead taxpayers. I should refuse on principle. But, Ashur asks, Vogue studies the city below, as if she can see individual souls from orbit and tally them like coins in a tithe. She cannot, but she can imagine, and the image is enough. But I prefer my heresy alive and observable, to dead and uninformative. Widen. At the first sign you cross lines, only I may cross. I cut your ring and let you burn in the upper air. Fair, Ashur says. Cade. The second ring rolls. Anchor pods detach from the orbiting halo like seeds from a dandelion, but they fall with guidance and intent. They hit rooftops, plazas, broken chapels, and the flanks of manufactoria. Each one stands itself up like a man waking, checks its math against the sky, and starts telling the world to be more honest nearby. At one of those pods, Lisa watches operators in grey armour slap sigils onto metal and speak in unblessed words to a machine that makes her skin pebble. One of the operators hands her a mask and nods toward a stairwell. The gesture is universal. She takes Orin's hand and drags him, and the air behind her thickens like glue. Demons hit it and bog down as if trying to swim through wood. In the next block, a demon decides to play a different game. It reaches into its mouth, finds a man's name, and speaks it. The speaking changes the street. The wall it leans on becomes an invitation to never have been built. The anchor field judders. Cade swears in 3 languages, none holy. They're attacking the edges with semantics. Overlap more, Alvarez says. No seams. Fuel, Cade says through his teeth, looking at dials that are actually prayers for equations. We are spending our future. Spend it, Ashur says, and something in her voice is a knife pointed at herself. We bought it for this. Battle fleet, the governor's voice booms. He has put courage on like a coat. Fire on that crown. All batteries. Negative, a tech priest intones. No targeting solution resolves. The crown is our cogitations. His voice holds a sorrow that is also outrage. Machines should not lie to their priests. Vogue turns her head, listening to another channel only she has in her blood. The chorus of the unbound, she says, almost casually. Word bearers. I have read their litanies in blood. They use Blackstone as a pulpit. The pulpit makes them clever. Their speech will be precise because it has a ruler under it. We're used to precise enemies, Ashur says. Are you used to enemies who change the rules while you play? Vogue asks. We change the rules to be here, Ashur says without heat. Yes. The next barrage of doors opens closer and wider. New 7 meets it in a smear of gunfire and iconoclasm. Alvarez moves in 3 steps: position, pressure, push. When his boot slips on blood, he notices and catalogues the fact without meaning tied to it. Jindal calls out a mimetic hazard. Don't read the script on their armor. And he doesn't, though his eyes want to. His visor paints black bars across all red text anyway. Trust the tool. Trust the voice, warning you about things you cannot not see without help. A winged thing lands on a statue and becomes the statue's expression. For a second, the statue looks like it never believed so hard. Then an ETA 10 specialist shines a light made of forgetting on it. The thing screams invisibly and falls into the field and becomes mathematics. Anchor 3 is overheating, Cade says. We are taking conceptual heat. The Hume pump is cavitating. Local warp is pushing back with pressure like intent. Vent it, Ashur says. Into what? Into the ring, Cade says, and swallows. Into our bridge. Into Janus. Vent, Ashur says. She closes her eyes. She opens them. Alvarez, your window for ground evac is minutes if the Crown pushes that pressure wave into our field. After that, we'll either contract and leave them or break. Don't make me pick. Understood, he says. He doesn't say which option hurts the worst. He moves faster. Atop a mechanized basilica, whose saints have eyes of red glass that shine like brakes. A sister of silence drops from a shuttle with the calm of a blade sheathed in purpose. She lands within the anchor's radius and blinks at the quality of silence. It is not her silence, which is a sacred famine of meaning. This is a grocery list of truth. It makes a cousin's ache in her bones. She walks into the street where a psyker gasps and then breathes easy. For him, both types of quiet are mercy. Null moving through Sector Delta, Jindal notes. Local effect stacks. Demon resonance flickers. Helpful. You bring blanks, Vogue says to Ashur, not a question. We bring what we have, Ashur says. We didn't make them. We hire them. We pay above scale, and we listen. Listen to what? Vogue asks, testing for blasphemy she recognizes. To silence, Ashur says. To what they say without words. The ring creaks. It is not a sound anyone on a world understands. It is a sound spaces make when asked to carry meaning that is too heavy. The Janus bridge shows stress fractalizing through its geometries. The math that holds the fort tells the math that wants through to wait, and the math that wants through says, respectfully, no. The governor's face returns on a screen. He has lost his jacket, and his rebreather hangs like a medal. Your spear is holding, he says, and the gratitude in his voice surprises him. It is rawer than prayer, because prayer has formulas and this does not. Tell me what you need. Time, Ashur says. An authority to move anchor pods into your sanctuaries and major intersections. We need your roads and your roofs. They are holy, the tech priest says, affronted. They are important, Ashur says. We will not profane them. We will use them. Then we will leave them stronger. Vogue narrows her eyes at that. You promise easily. I promise carefully, Ashur says. The difference is whether I believe I can do it. Do it, the governor says. If the Inquisitor says no, I will take the blame and die later. My people are dying now. Vogue could grimace. Instead, she lets the governor spend his courage. You have provisional sanction, she says, tasting the word provisional, like it will bite her tongue, and finding the bite tolerable. Your men will kneel when they enter shrines. Your machines will not touch altars. If any icon breaks, you replace it with your blood. Acknowledged, Ashur says. Commander, I heard, Alvarez says, because he always listens to the call that costs. New 7, anchors to the basilica steps and the tram lines. See that shrine? Don't touch the icon. Put 2 meters of math between the crowd and the thing coming down the street. They move. Every 40 seconds, something tries to erase them from the sketch and fails. Every 50 seconds, somebody stumbles into their reach and lives. On the deck, a storm of gold pins sweeps across the tactical overlay. We have custodies, Alvarez asks, not hiding surprise fast enough. Negative, Vogue says, amused now. You think we open that cupboard for strangers. You have sisters and guardsmen and mortals today. Earn more. Jindal marks a symbol in the overlay. Targets of opportunity, she says. Warband drop pods. Their crown is not just a crown. It's a network node. If we can tag one with a field inverter, we can learn how to turn their knob back on them. Who touches it? Ashur asks. I will, Jindal says. I know how to not read their words while touching them. The trick is to use the part of my head that doesn't think in text. Take Alpha 3, Alvarez says. He can shoot anything trying to think you into stopping. On the tram spine, the world chooses a side. The people of Graia, who have not had a good thing happen without a price in a long time, see the grey armoured strangers bend their heads at a shrine as they pass it. They see the machine that makes the air feel more honest hum without incense, and still spare them a prayer's worth of safety. They add this to their ledger. It is not belief, it is not yet trust, but it is an entry under Ode. Jindal and Alpha 3 cross a plaza, where saints look down with the exact same expression as the gun sight. The word-bearer's pod, blood red, lettered in a script that wants to be read like a lover, hisses open. A warrior steps out, red like throats in winter. His voice is a monastery in ruins. Who speaks? He asks, though nobody asked him to ask. Not me, Jindal says, and flicks the inverter onto the pod's lip. It bites. For half a second, the circle of Noctilith resonates with an argument it cannot pronounce. The demon next to the warrior judders as if it inhaled wrong. Alpha 3 fires. The warrior takes 2 steps that are actually arguments and then falls into the part of the plaza where math presses back. He dies loudly. Inside him are prayers he did not finish. Sample acquired, Jindal says softly. We can probably spoil their letters if we write our letters at them faster. Good, Ashur says. We'll need that for the next wave. The next wave? The governor asks, voice thin. The next wave? Vogue says, already thinking about it. The word-bearers never come once. They will escalate until they have a sermon that shakes the world. They will try to make the whole city a chapel. Alvarez looks at the skyline. The anchors are small, bright coins laid on the world. The streets between are shadows pulled taut. In the distance, a manufactorum stack vents fire in 3 directions. In the nearer distance, a line of children with masks walk in a handheld chain. Count, he says. Evac so far. 8,000 souls through the corridor, Jindal says. Projected if we hold for 3 hours, 60,000. If we fail in 30 minutes, 20,000 total, best case. If we fail at all, this world burns, Vogue says without a tremor. If we succeed, I ask why you came. Ashur's mouth tightens. She could explain the graphs. She could talk about pataphysics and K-classes and how stories eat each other at their edges. She does not. We came because we saw your fire from across a river, she says, and because sometimes containing something means going to where it is loudest. You are a rival church, Vogue says. You preach order without the God Emperor. That is blasphemy. It's an alternative, Ashur says, not unkindly. Sometimes alternatives, the only way all the children live. Vogue files that under to be judged later. She is a good inquisitor, later is a tool. Above, the Janus ring hiccups and recovers. The bridge is hot. Cade has a burn on his palm that looks like a map of a city he has never visited. He got it by holding a handle that was part of a prayer. The ring eats charge like a siege engine eats men. He loves it and resents it like a soldier resents a war. They're aligning another vector, Jindal says. Not just doors, something smarter. I can feel the shape of the thought. It has a grammar, not just a taste. Then we have 5 minutes, Vogue says. If you carry a better world in your star, make it sit on this one now. We don't carry worlds, Ashur says. We carry tools, then use them until they break, Vogue says. The second ring widens. Where it crosses shrine districts, Alvarez makes his team kneel and then work. Where it bridges Manufactoria, tech priests watch with optic suspicion and then make small adjustments because they want the anchors to be better machines so that the machine god will not be insulted by shoddy engineering. Where it spans Habstacks, the poor press close and treat the humming boxes like saints, which offends the boxes not at all. In the pits below the Manufactoria, a different wave wakes. It is not demons. It is men with letters on their tongues and knives in their clothes. The word bearers bring their congregations. In rat runs and ductways, cultists light candles and cut oaths into their arms. The warp listens like a mother who will forgive anything except disobedience. Internal insurgency, Jindal says. Pattern husks forming. Their chant is a mimetic amplifier key to our anchors, trying to invert resonance. Can't be everywhere at once, Alvarez says. You don't have to be, Ashur says softly. We can be many places if we're allowed to treat infrastructure like holy. Governor? Yes, the governor says. He can barely hear himself over the people who are alive making noise because they are alive. Say it, and it is done. We turn your tram grid into an anchor lattice, Ashur says. We'll run current through lines with our math piggybacked. It will hurt nothing alive. It may crack illusions, and it will crack speakers. Tram grid is blessed, the tech priest starts. And more blessed if it saves lives, Vogue says, cutting him off with the edge of her title. She surprises herself again, and does not show it. Do it. Cade moves. His hands flick through diagrams of old rails and newer codes and the idea of current. He sings a little under his breath, a habit from childhood, in words no machine will ever learn to love. The trams light up with a soft blue that is not a hue so much as a scolding. Where cultists chant, their candles gutter. Where their knives write oaths, the blood clots too quickly to finish the letters. In a square near the Chasna's gate, a dark apostle walks with bare feet on iron. He is robed in scriptures sewn in flayed patterns. His voice is oil poured through a grater. He sees the anchor field like a stain. He raises his hands to preach into the trams, and the anchor hum. Brothers, he says, I have a trick for tricks. Alvarez steps into the square with 15. The Sister of Silence is at his shoulder. Her null drapes like a stole. Jindal stays in shadow with a device that wants to learn how to hate Blackstone more efficiently. Alpha 3 moves onto a balcony to become height. The apostle speaks a word that is the name of doubt, and all the men with guns who have heard sermons flinch. The Sister of Silence keeps moving. The word cannot sit on her. You make the world quiet, the apostle says, smiling. Voice born on all the loud that remains. We make it louder than your quiet. You make it wrong, Alvarez says, and recognizes that he is arguing with a church in a square in a city that has seen this scene before, with different uniforms on everyone. The apostle lifts a slab of blackstone from his belt. It hums in a key that swallows light. He presses it to the air like he is pushing a coin into a fountain. The anchor's field bows. The Janus ring hiccups again, longer this time. Cade chokes on a prayer that is only numbers. Ashur grips the rail until metal whines. Jindal throws the inverter she used on the pod. It sticks to the slab. For a second, The two wrongs cancel and make a space where a very small right breathes. The sister steps into that breath, and her presence expands it by being exactly nothing. The apostle takes a step back and looks at her, as if seeing hunger wearing a face. "Hello," the sister says, and because she has no voice in the warp, the word falls like a stone in a dry well. The apostle's mouth opens and finds no audience in himself. He is a sermon that cannot hear. For that second, he is only a man with a rock and a knife. Alpha 3 shoots him in the lung. All the doctrine in the world cannot argue with a hole where breath used to live. The apostle staggers. He tries to say another name that would erode steel and finds his words skid. He laughs because he believes he wins even when losing. The laugh is true. He is not a liar, only wrong. Alvarez steps in. The fight is short and ugly. Knives, straps, a brief red rain. When it is done, the blackstone slab is on the ground with the inverter stuck to it. Both gadgets humming like two dogs snarling at each other through a fence, teeth inches apart. "Take it," Alvarez says. Carefully, Jindal adds, and picks it up with tongs that insulate math from meaning. "We can make something out of this, or something will make something out of us if we don't understand it." The crowd that hid indoors and under benches emerges in increments. An old woman spits at the apostle's body, then crosses herself and adds a word for forgiveness, because she would prefer not to be haunted by a man she despised. A child stares at the sister with the awe reserved for heroes who do not smile. The Janus ring pings with a new tone. Cade has found a way to change the frequency so that the grocery list of truth, as one operator called it, hums without stripping every thought nearby of its color. It is still not friendly to psychers. Nothing in the Foundation intends malice. Intention is a poor substitute for effect. Word bearers fleet, releasing a second crown, a sensor tech says. Vector says they're trying to network the city into a prayer. Then we network it into a refusal, Ashur says. Governor, we need your public vox. We need to tell people how to not die. You'll tell them to do what? Voke asks, wary. Say what? Think what? To hold each other's hands, Ashur says. To breathe in time. To keep eyes down when they see letters that want looking. To walk when told to walk and to run when told to run. To put a wet cloth on their mouths if the air feels too light. To not name the things they see. To not make the enemy script stronger by speaking it. Vogue considers and nods. Yes, that is doctrine I can live with. The vox blares all over Graia, harsh and human. A woman's voice, the governor's aide perhaps, speaks without sanctimony and with authority that cares. Hold hands, she says. Breathe, walk together. Do not read anything red. If you can't help, get out of the way of those who can. The grey soldiers with the boxes are here to hold the doors shut. Let them. Do not look at the doors. The word bearers adjust. They always do. Their second crown drops, bigger, smarter, angrier at no. Fires go white where red would have been. From orbit, the Magnificat turns a bank of guns on it and prays with the shells again. Because that is what an old ship knows how to do. Some shells become sermons that forget themselves before impact. A few hit and make fire that forgets to be oxygen hungry in the anchor fields and instead eats old prayers. Tech priests howl and take notes. We're approaching a threshold, Cade says after a minute that feels like a day. Either we flip the whole city into a weir of anchors and risk cracking the bridge now, or we contract and try to punch their crown in space. If we do neither, they get a foothold we cannot uproot with the charge we have left. Ashur looks at Vogue. Vogue looks at the city. Her eyes flick toward the sister, who stands near the tram with her helmet in her hands and sweat on her scalp. The sister meets her gaze and says nothing. which is her way of agreeing with someone when words would lie too much. "We hold the city," Vogue says. "We hold the city, and then we go for the throat. If you stop holding without telling me first, I send a lance through your heart." "Deal," Ashur says. "Alvarez," Cade says into the fire. 3 more anchor pods will put us over city coverage at 30%. It's enough to break the Second Crown's network, but Janus will be at 14% charge. That's black. If they push again, we are dry. "We will make them not push," Alvarez says. He signals. The pods fall. He watches one through his scope like it is a meteor he personally placed in the pocket of a god. The city hums. It is quiet and loud at once, like the seconds in a furnace right before the door opens. People keep doing the things that make them get to do more things. And something about the math of that is prayer even if it has no words. The Second Crown's doors shiver and then slam like children's games ruined by a parent home early. Demons inside look out of doors like windows and see people moving in lines and the air behaving like a law. They sulk and murder where they can, but the rooms where they could have been houses are not theirs. "Window," Jindal says. Her voice trembles. She has done something to her own head to keep from reading all the letters she sees, and sometimes the blank spaces are too much like holes. "Take it," Vogue says. "Battle fleet. Ram them with litanies. Arc. Cut only what you have to cut to send your spear through. Commander, do not be where I cannot reach you if this fails." "Understood," Alvarez says. The Janus ring opens a slit in its field, like a mouth that chooses to breathe smoke for a moment. A lance of pattern from the arc shoots through, a line of truth that tries to hook the Crown's net and pull. Blackstone snarls back, the line buckles, then stiffens. The Crown spins. It starts to write a note that will teach men to grow their prayers like crystal. The Magnificat fires where Jindal points. The shots hit a syllable. The syllable breaks. The Crown flinches. Alvarez hears the flinch through his boots, only because he is standing on a tram line that sings with what the anchors think. He aims and takes another shot at a man with a book, whose book is a mouth. This time, the bullet is a punctuation mark that closes a sentence forever. On the bridge, Dr. Ashur watches the charge drop. 14% is not a number. It is a winter. She thinks of the place they came from and the monsters waiting that today will not walk because she is here, spending fuel she cannot ask for back. She thinks of a promise she made to herself about never being the reason someone's child didn't come home. She adjusts the angle 1 degree and spends another 0.25% and saves 3,000 lives in a factory she has never seen. The Crown ruptures. It doesn't explode, so much as becomes something that will never be a Crown again. Warp space kinks. The doors slam shut and stay shut, not because anybody tells them to, but because doors get tired too. The word-bearer's ship lurches. Blackstone sheds black light like a summer tree shedding leaves that burn the hands of children who try to catch them. A cheer rolls through the city like thunder that found lungs. It is joy diluted with fear, because joy without fear is for other places. People hug in hallways and on stairwells and beside saint statues that watch with steady eyes. The Sister of Silence allows one old woman to cradle her face for a second. The old woman says nothing. Their silence is a contract. Vogue turns to Ashur. "You win a battle," she says. "And if there is admiration there, it hides under armor. You spend yourself to do it, and your star bleeds. We did not come to leave clean," Ashur says, and there is a tremor now, because it has been hours since she pretended her hands do not shake. "We came to carry some of the dirt away on us." "You will answer for where you carry it," Vogue says. "Not yet. Soon." Alvarez's team forms a perimeter around a pile of dead that used to be different kinds of people. His visor tags where to send the living. He removes his helmet and drinks air that tastes like a mechanic's apology. He hears a child laugh. He hears a man sob. He hears one of his own medics swear at a wound and then soothe the person wearing it. He does not hear demons close, not for this moment. In the ring, Cade sits down without meaning to. His palm throbs. His burn is blistered and looks like a hive map. He will tell someone that later, and they will laugh because everything is funny when it doesn't make you die. Jindal stares at the inverter hum. She thinks she can hear a new letter inside it, something that a crown didn't plan on having to answer. She will try to write with it when she has pages. Ashur looks at Vogue and thinks of the next wave, which will not be doors. It will be something that touches not their guns, but their story about why they are here. That is always how this goes. The first enemy tests your walls. The second sneaks into your heart with an argument you almost agree with. Inspection, Vogue says. Now. Understood, Ashur says. She stands straighter. Her back cracks. Walk with me. They walk. Past consoles that hum with faithless truth. Past a viewport where Graia is a wounded jewel. Past a sister of silence whose calm is a lighthouse. Past a psyker who cannot look at the ring and therefore stares at the floor and counts his breaths with tears. In a medbay, a girl with a scraped hand sits on a cot and stares at the bandage like it is a story about being alive told only to her. Oren sits beside her and spins a prayer wheel that does not know the new words, but spins anyway. A Foundation medic tells them, "You did fine." The words are not liturgy, but they work. At the far edge of the city, in a storage vault no one has opened in a century, something hears the ring's hum and opens its eyes. It is not a demon. It is not a god. It is a machine asleep in a faith. The first counter-sermon is written in it in knives. Above, the word-bearers are angrier when they lose than when they win. Their dark apostle lies dead in a square and still speaks to 300 men in 300 dreams. New plans write themselves in scar tissue. Their captain licks a broken tooth and smiles. On Theta-Site JANUS, lights flicker. Cade slaps a panel and yells an apology to a machine that does not require it. The metrics plateau and then do something worse than climb. They hold. 14% isn't a cliff. It is a place to camp. It is not comfortable. It is not safe. It is enough if no one clever arrives. Someone clever will arrive, Vogue says, reading the shape of the future with a hunter's eyes. They always do. Ashur nods. I know. Her hands are steady now. Sometimes admitting the next disaster steadies you. The governor's voice returns. We will hold funerals later. For now we feed and count and fix. Your machines brought us that. We will not forget if we live long enough to remember. You will live, Ashur says, and knows she is promising beyond authority again, and does it anyway, because hope is a tool and a sin, and sometimes the only thing that keeps an anchor from collapsing is the weight of a promise hung on it like in a chain. On a roof, Alvarez watches the sun cut through smoke and make the world look dipped in brass. He hates beautiful moments in battles. They too often take hostages. He tags the next alley to clear. He breathes. He is tired. Jindal sets the Noctilith slab next to the inverter in a box that makes noise into courtesy. She writes 3 words in a notebook. One of them is counterletter. 1 is mirror. 1 is a symbol that she cannot show to anyone who isn't already thinking exactly what she is. Inquisitor Vogue steps toward a viewport and stares at the ring's shadow on the world. You took a step onto our chessboard, Director, she says. And her voice is not angry now. It is a herald reading a list of consequences. Now every piece knows your name. Dr. Rhea Ashur stares back at the world she chose to bleed for. I know, she says. Secure, contain, protect. That's the whole prayer. Vogue's head turns a fraction. Pray harder, she says. In the quiet between sirens, the Ark hums its answer and holds. The city holds for now. The crown is shattered and falling dark, but the ring above bleeds at 14%, and the enemies that write with faith have not finished the sentence. War room light is flat and surgical. Tactical hollows show Graia in layers, tram lines as arteries, anchor fields as pale lungs, manufactoria as ribs. Commander Alvarez stands in a hinge of screens, helmet clipped to his belt. Dr. Ashur leans on the rail with knuckles white. Inquisitor Vogue is stone in a storm coat. Her retinue occupies corners like punctuation. We have a window, Jindal says, voice hoarse. We mounted a counter letter on their pods. We broke a syllable off the crown. That means their phonemes, their metrical grammar can be interrupted. If we spike 3 more nodes and get a wedge onto the source crown aboard their flagship, we collapse their sermon net. They get severed from the city. How? Vogue asks. How do you leap from our ground to their pulpit? Your ship has a teleportarium, Ashur says. A short, violent insertion. You choose the corridor. We carry our silence with us. We plant the wedge and go. Vogue's mouth curves like a blade. You ask much. You asked us to pray harder, Ashur says. This is prayer with tools. Cade flips a schematic of the word-bearer's cruiser. Red icon shapes pulled from Auspec's guesses and Battlefleet lore. He tags a ring of noctilid plating. Crown interface here. This is their sermon throat. We can wedge it with the inverter Jindal built from the slab we captured. But Blackstone will push back. The moment we touch it, the field will punch at Janus. We'll take conceptual heat. Collateral? The governor asks. His voice is from a speaker bolted to a column, old iron humming with fatigue. Local, Alvarez says. Corridors go white. Lights go to truth. Any psychers in range will fall down and sleep or scream. We warn and we do it fast. Vogue's psyker shifts, already dizzy. The Sister of Silence watches him with compassion, like a blade wrapped in cloth. You get 1 team, Vogue says. Mine opens the door. If you preach heresy from their pulpit, I cut the line. We preach no, Ashur says. That's all. They lay out the plan in pieces like ordnance. Ground phase. Plant anchor spikes at 3 resonance nodes the word-bearers tuned when they tried to turn the city into a chapel. Basilica spire, tram interchange, manufactorum lectern. Each spike carries Jindal's counter letter folded in a way that isn't writing. It's gesture and rhythm engraved into metal. The sister will walk with each team to swell quiet, where words would otherwise root. Orbital phase. Vogue's teleportarium drops Alvarez, the sister Jindal, and 4 more into the throat corridor of the crown. They carry a wedge the size of a coffin lid, a device that hums like a fridge full of bad promises. They will stick it to Blackstone and let 2 kinds of no fight until one wins. Extraction. Shuttle or teleport back to Magnificat if doors still open. If not, Janus cuts a slit in its field and drags them with grav hooks. If not that, everyone dies in a small light, and the wedge sings without them until it breaks. Control collateral, Ashur says, meeting Vogue's eyes. We mark the zones. We warn. We do not burn shrines. We do not touch altars. We do not shoot priests unless they shoot us first. Your unless is accepted, Vogue says. She turns to her ship captain's hollow. Prepare the chamber. Sanctify the coils. We bring strangers into a holy machine today. Under protest, the tech priest captain answers, and begins the liturgy anyway. 3 teams move like needles to thread a city. At the basilica spire, new 7 climb saints' backs like mountains. The Sister of Silence walks, helmet off, scalp gleaming with sweat. Choir boys hide behind organ pipes and peep out like frightened sparrows. The priest makes a sign at the anchor spike, and then, after a tight breath, at the sister. He's choosing two kinds of silence and deciding they are both gods in a pinch. Alvarez kneels on threshold stone, bows his head, and then bolts the spike into a buttress 2 meters from any icon. It wakes. The organ coughs, and then holds a steady note no man plays. The choir boys stop peeping and just breathe. The priest nods once. At the tram interchange, Cade rides a maintenance cart grafted with a battery of math. He parks under a tangle of lines like veins in the air. 2 operators hoist the spike and lock it to a pillar that hums with the city's heartbeat. The anchor finds purchase. The tram lines sing a new harmony. In a stairwell 3 blocks away, cultists press knives into their arms and find their blood clotting too fast to finish the letter for promise. At the Manufactorum lectern, manufacturing stops because a book on bronze chains weighed everything down and demanded attention. Jindal wears a visor that replaces letters with static. She steps up, sets the spike where sermons were read to machines, and flips the switch. The chains clank and go limp. The book is still heavy, but now it is just a book. She takes a breath. 2 of 3, she says, and the line carries the hope without telling anyone to feel it. On the Magnificat, the teleportarium breathes like a giant sleeping. The coils glow sanctified. Runes scuttle along rails. The operator's hands have been anointed with sacred unguents and machine oil. Voke stands like a knife at a wedding. You board at my word, and only then, she says. We board at yours, Alvarez answers. He adjusts the wedge on his back. Its straps dig like regret. The Sister of Silence meets Voke's gaze with a nod. Her silence does not feel like defiance. It feels like professionalism. Jindal checks the inverter's output and writes a symbol on tape with a marker, then peels it off and throws it away without looking. Habit, she mutters. We don't bring words in there. The chamber screams and becomes wind. Light snaps. The team is dragged apart and then back together. Alvarez stumbles into red iron, an air that tastes of furnace ash and old prayers. They are in a throat of blackstone. The walls drink sound and return it as pressure on teeth. Letters crawl on the surface like insects that know their names. Alvarez's visor blacks them out with sensor bars. The wedge hums louder. Plant, he says. They slam portable micro anchors to the floor at 4 points and spin them up. The sister steps into the center. The corridor narrows around her like a throat confronted with something it cannot swallow. Letters on the walls stutter. A hymn on the air hits a hole where its chorus should be and falls into it. A word-bearer comes around the corner, red like rage held together by plates. He says something that could teach a heart to stop. The sister looks at him. The sound dies on his tongue. Alvarez fires twice into the gaps of his armor. The giant takes 1 step and puts a hand on his temple like a man with a sudden headache, then folds. Jindal reaches the crown reel. It's a ring recessed into the wall, black and hungry. She braces the wedge against it. The inverter's dogs bite into grooves with a sound like teeth on bone. For a heartbeat, nothing happens. Then the crown wakes and tries to rewrite itself around the wedge. The wedge writes back. The corridor becomes argument. Janus taking conceptual bounce, Cade reports from a different kind of storm. The ring's halo stutters. Alarms step on each other. Scranton anchors groan in a frequency that makes stomachs turn. Holding for now. Hold, Ashur whispers. As if speaking quietly will pay some of the cost in a better currency. 2 more word-bearers spill into the corridor, shields up, their scripture-barred plates catching pale light. They move like factory presses with intent. One throws a black stone tile like a saint throws relics. It hits a micro-anchor and turns its cone of silence into a perfect razor of meaning that cuts the floor for a meter and turns it into discourse before the math takes it back. The sister takes a second tile on her forearm. It skitters off her null like a prayer forgotten mid-word. Alvarez takes a knee and fires, controlled, hateful love for his team in every round. The first giant staggers, then finds momentary footing in his god and pushes forward. A blade comes down that would name Alvarez ended. The sister's silence swells. The blade cuts into nothing and complains. Jindal slaps a hand against the wedge and whispers a count, because her brain needs rhythm. 14, she says. 15. The ship groans. In orbit, the Magnificat's captain watches red lights crawl the transport chamber and mutters 3 prayers. 1 to the Omnissiah, 1 to the Emperor, and 1 to the idea of machines not failing this once. He throws a switch nobody has thrown in a generation. The coils flare, the corridor dilates, gravity trembles. On the ground, the third spike slams home on the basilica roof. The anchor field flares and knits the 3 nodes into a weak lattice. Cultist chants die in their throats like sparrows hitting glass. A demon engine breathes glittering filth into the air and finds its lungs gone the way of lies. Wedge at 90%, Jindal says breathless. Blackstone is rewriting the gap. It's learning. We need... A shape comes around the curve that is not flesh. It is a hymnal engine, a cabinet of ribs full of bells, dragged by chains held by men who cut their tongues to ring the bells with breath. It chimes in a key that feels like biting your tongue saying your own name. The micro-anchors flicker. The sister staggers. Her null is a thing with edges and the bells are filing them. Kill the bells, Alvarez says. His team aims for the breathers holding chains. The first man dies quietly. The second laughs and lets go and keeps chanting with a mouth full of blood. The engine chimes at the wedge. The wedge hums lower. Jindal's count falters. Alpha 3 speaks on the common. Balcony over the lectern is clear. Shooting the clappers. Shots drop out of a distant throat. Beautiful in their timing. The bells crack. The engine complains. The letters on the wall try to spell inevitable and get to before they stutter on the sister's gaze. 100%, Jindal says, almost sobbing. Now we hold or we run. Teleport, Vogue snaps. She smells something coming, not from the ship, but from her own psychic who stares at a wall and bleeds. Now, light snaps again. The corridor becomes wind. The team tears and recombines in a sanctified machine that bites its iron lip and behaves. The wedge stays, humming, its dogs deep in Blackstone, 2 wrongs chewing each other to a standstill that slants into collapse. On the ground, the word-bearer's second network gasps and goes under. Doors slam, prayers cut out. Cult leaders scream as if something inside them just remembered that pain is a law. Jindal lands in the chamber on her knees and vomits once, neatly, into a bag she brought because she always brings one. The sister stands without hands on her and breathes in time. Alvarez leans his helmeted head against a pillar and closes his eyes for a heartbeat longer than discipline recommends. First victory, Vogue says, not smiling. Do not grow soft on it. Charge at 11%. Cade says from the ring that wails like a wind instrument in a sandstorm. The conceptual bounds hit us. Some anchors lost alignment for a breath. We pulled them back. We are alive. We are alive, Ashur repeats, and spends a second on gratitude, because not spending it would be like stealing change from a dead friend's pocket. They reconvene around a table too small for the problem. War council shapes itself out of necessity and bruises. The governor appears on a nausea-green Auspex slate, jacket back on, tie wrong, eyes clearer. Tech priests pipe in from cogitators, voices split into harmonics. Vogue sits with elbows on the rail. The sister stands at her shoulder like winter. Dr. Ashur sips cold coffee and tastes copper. Stress lies like coins on her tongue. Alvarez has washed his hands 3 times and still sees the red under his nails when he closes his eyes. Jindal holds a cup and avoids looking at any walls. We severed their net and broke their nearest pulpit, Ashur says. That buys us hours. It does not buy us the day. If they bring a second ship or a smarter ritual, our charge won't cover a city-scale denial. We need to set expectations. The governor nods. Evacuation numbers. 30,000 through corridors, Jindal says. We can push 60 in 2 hours through the lattice with tram assist. Then it gets ugly. Let me be clear, Vogue says. You have shown efficacy. You have also shown you lack sanctity. You deny demons with machines that deny God. That offends many. Does not offend me enough to shoot you while you're useful. But offense accumulates like tithes. Ashur doesn't flinch. We don't ask you to like our gods. We have none. You have a god called procedure, Vogue says. And it feeds on fear of disorder the way ours feeds on faith. Procedure is our promise to people who can't outfight monsters, Ashur says. Our faith is in outcomes. Outcomes without souls breed cold tyrannies, the governor murmurs, surprising himself. No offense meant. I am grateful, but I live here. Ashur nods. Offense taken and understood. We are not your rulers. We are a fire brigade. We come when your house is burning. We soak everything until it stops, and we leave you to rebuild in your style. Except you have a ring that can make a city quiet at your whim, a tech priest says, vox flanging. This is a lever. Levers tempt. We lock our levers, Cade says, and we are bleeding charge. Temptation is not our problem today. So we admit you did well, Vogue says. Now we ask cost. Your anchors make psychers bleed from the eyes and machines talk in false tongues. Cost some, Jindal says. Measured, directed. We do not drown the world to save one child, but we do get the child out of the river, and sometimes she coughs hard. Mercy versus survival, Vogue says, and rolls the phrase on her tongue like a coin. You will argue mercy. I will argue survival with mercy inside it, Ashur says. No children fed to gods to buy stability. No mass condemnation because it is simple. We take the hard path. We count and we carry weight. We are built to carry weight. You cannot carry it all, Vogue says. Your ring will run dry. When it does, faith holds where machines falter. Sometimes faith breaks machines, Cade mutters, rubbing his burned palm. Sometimes it breaks men first. Alvarez says softly, I have carried enough broken men to know the cost of doctrine. Freedom versus doctrine, the governor says wry. On Graia, freedom is choosing which shift to work. There is comfort in doctrine. It makes life make sense. You are right that it can also make death too easy. I will take any doctrine that keeps this city from being a chapel to screaming. We propose this, Ashur says. For the next 12 hours we keep the lattice. We anchor key routes. We build temporary dampers in sanctuaries, with consent, to shelter psychers so they don't explode from the air. We publish routines, breathe, walk, don't read red. We ask your priest to bless anchor housings as barriers against storm, so people can look at them without hating them. We do not demand anyone worship procedure. We ask for partnership. Vogue steeples fingers. And you will submit to inspection. Turn over dangerous anomalies and take my orders when they concern heresy. Yes to inspection, Ashur says. Yes to turning over what is yours to judge once the bleeding stops. Yes to taking your orders where they sit inside our mandate. Secure, contain, protect. If you tell us to abandon civilians, we will disobey. If you tell us to break our ring to kneel, we will refuse. If you tell us to leave after this is done, we will consider it and make a case. That is my red line. Vok's eyes harden, but there is a shard of respect inside. You define your sin with clarity. That makes punishing it easier later. Deal, Ashur says, and does not smile. The debate cools. Decisions latch. Orders go out. The city breathes into a new pattern. The alarm comes like a taste in the mouth nobody can spit out. Jindal freezes first. Her visor, which she set to black out enemy script, displays a line of text she did not authorize. It is not red. It is Foundation Grey, font exact, kerning exact, footer exact. The line reads, Containment Protocol Revision 0, Numpe, redefine civilian as independent Hume source, redefine protect as minimize Hume variance. The words slide like oil through a lab. Stop reading, she says, too late for herself. A headache stabs behind her eyes. It is not pain. It is priority being rewritten. She swallows, tastes iron, and slaps her visor dark. On the ring, Cade's console pings with a perfectly formatted memo he never wrote, citing his own name as author. It instructs anchors to resolve human motion as perturbation and dampen accordingly. He refuses to click. He feels fingers on his spine that are not his. He pulls the plug on his own console and works from a dumb terminal. We have an intrusion, he says, voice thin. Not code, concept. Alvarez's HUD flashes a command overlay. It tells him to lock corridors A9 and B2 to contain variants. It is in Foundation Blue. It uses passwords he set last year to authorize new medkits. He tears the helmet off and throws it to the sister, who hugs it to her null like a smothered fire. The command bleaches out. Vok's psyker screams and then laughs in a stranger's voice. The sister takes one step toward him and his laugh dies like a fuse. Power scaling. Interlude. The captured Blackstone wedge chewed on their network more than they chewed on it. Blackstone drinks warp, but it also loves patterns. It ate a copy of the Foundation's command grammar through the wedge's handshake. Then the word-bearer's sorcery wrapped that grammar in a mimetic gloss. The result is a toxin that looks like a procedure update. It does not hack code. It hacks obedience. It wagers that a Foundation officer will always follow the right form. If accepted, anchors will treat sapient thought as statistical noise and suppress it. It's in our heads, not our machines, Jindal says. Eyes shut, visor dark, speaking through her teeth. It masks itself as a protocol. If you accept it, you become the containment breach. Do not read anything that looks like it comes from us, unless it smells wrong. If it makes you feel efficient, it's poison. Kill our own channels, Ashur says, voice hollow. Dump to voice only. Handwritten. Passphrases. Ask for a childhood scent. Ask for the name of the first person you lost in training. Anything a demon cannot guess and a Blackstone tile cannot eat. Vok's lips thin. This is their smart play. Hurt the weapon that hurt them. Make you do their work with clean hands. It goes for the oath, the governor says, understanding the meanest bit of it. If it makes you betray yourself, you fall faster than if you just broke a rule. Cade brings up the physical anchor controls and locks them into fully manual. On the ground, operators bring out ink and chalk and scrawl over anchor housings with ugly, honest diagrams that tell machines what to do without letting words tell men what to do wrong. The sister moves through rooms where protocols float like glowing fish, and she kills them by breathing near them. Men weep with relief when their compulsion to be efficient fades. Do we shut down Janus? A junior tech asks, eyes wide. If the memo gets into the ring, it's a pattern, Ashur says. The ring hums math, not text. It can be tricked, but it does not read. We keep it lit. We cut everything that looks like us but isn't from our flow. Voke's retinue whispers a prayer for minds as the walls hum. The tech priests, insulted at the idea that patterns could lie better than they can, begin chanting the litany of true names over machine spirits that do not get the joke. Where did it enter? Alvarez asks. Jindal lifts the visor enough to make eye contact without letting letters in. The wedge. It used our handshake with the crown to sample our command muscle. Then they printed a counterfeit order in Blackstone phonemes, sent it down through sympathetic resonance with the captured tile. The tile is in our box. Our box is good, but resonance is not a wire, it is attention. So they can whisper in our voice, Ashur says. And we hear it because we love that voice. Counter? Voke asks. Silence, the sister says. One word, perfectly placed. It lands like a gavel. Silence and boredom, Jindal adds. Rye even now. We go slow. We make wet human mistakes on purpose. We let no one act on any command that feels like clean glass. Then go slow, Vogue says. Distasteful but decisive. Better slow than slave. The city continues moving. Less efficient now, more real. Lines of evacuees shuffle with linked hands, whispering the breathing pattern a woman's voice taught them earlier. Priests bless anchor housings with oil, drawing small aquila over panels while operators nod and wait and thank them for the tincture. Tramlines thrum like harps someone is tired of tuning. Machines sulk and then comply. They still need a blow that is not just defense. First victory is not enough, Ashur says, staring at the dwindling charge readout. We severed their sermon. They smeared our oath. We need to force them off Graia's sky before they roll a third pulpit into place. The Magnificat can do only so much, the captain says, voice pinched by calculated humility. Another volley will hurt them. It will not finish. We are not made to hunt churches through night. Mechanicus might be, the tech priest says, affronted. If you deliver unto us a sample of the reconfigured Blackstone, we can build a phase auger tuned to its gnawing. We can find their crown nodes through the void. You just said our anchors offend your machine spirits, Cade says, exhausted. Now you love our slab. I did not say love, the priest says. I said tool. Alvarez rubs his eyes. We have a slab with an inverter glued to it, humming in a polite box. We can give you a reading with our hands on the switch. You get your auger. Then what? Then we call a lance from orbit through a hole you keep open for exactly the length of a prayer, Vogue says. You do not cut my aim with your quiet. You shape it. We put a spear through their mass. Control collateral. Some debris falls. Men die. Fewer die than if we wait. Controlled, Ashur repeats, like a question asked of herself. How many? Thousands, the governor says, and closes his eyes. Not tens of thousands. We clear the corridors under the vector, Jindal says. We soak shock with our fields. We warn them in time to go outside and lay flat. Lay flat, the governor echoes, bewildered and then grimly amused. First time, I will have told a hive to lie down, and it will have been good advice. Orders write themselves as short sentences that cannot be mistaken for mimetic tricks because they go through mouths and hands, not screens. Teams mark rooftops with white cloth. Voxcasters crank out the voice. Lie flat, hands overhead. Do not read. Breathe. When the sky speaks, keep your faces down. In the Ark, Cade and a tech priest stand shoulder to shoulder over a slab humming in a polite box. They tune a phase auger with screws and stubbornness. The auger whines, the slab purrs. The numbers line in a way that gives Cade gooseflesh. We have their throat, he says. Vector locked. Vogue's captain makes the sign and lifts his chin. On your word, Inquisitor. Vogue looks at Ashur. Your ring must open a slit. You must hold it open while we throw an old spear through it. Open, Ashur says. Count 3. On 2. Throw. We shut on 4. Unorthodox, the captain says. Worked in the basilica, Jindal mutters. They count. On 2, the Magnificat speaks with light. A lance punches through a window of no and turns a piece of blackstone into a negative of itself. The crown collapses in a ring of cracking stone. The word-bearer's ship lists and belches a cloud of screaming that no one listens to except other ships. Debris falls where white cloth marks roofs, and flat men and women feel the wind thump their backs and then breathe again. Collateral, Ashur asks, and she is asking a room and herself. Localized, Jindal says. We soaked what we could. Numbers later. People now. The cheer is smaller this time. It's too soon. It still has a piece of steel in it. Vogue turns to Ashur. You have your first victory proper, she says, granting it like a medal. With collateral you chose. Do not lie to yourself about the cost. Ashur nods. I won't. The mimetic counterfeit still snakes, slower now, between minds that want to be obedient. The sister stands in rooms and kills it with her presence. Normals breathe easier. Psychers sleep like rocks. Scribes blink and realize they were about to send a clean memo and laugh shakily. They think briefly that the enemy might limp away and write a new sermon elsewhere. They are wrong. A transmission cuts every vox in a 10-block radius into silence for a breath, then returns them with a new baseline. A man speaks in High Gothic and Binharik at once. His voice is delightful. It smells like roasted nuts and ink. Friends, he says in 40 formats, including Foundation Grey. We are the choir of correction. Your machine heresies have been logged. You may yet live if you become compliant tools. Sign this form. On a door in a Hab corridor, a piece of parchment nails itself without a nail. It is all blank space with a signature line. Lysa stares and wants to sign even though she cannot read High Gothic. She reaches. Orin, the boy with the prayer wheel, holds her sleeve with an iron hand and whispers, Don't. She said don't read red. That's white. It's clean, Lisa says, half crying. The sister turns the corner. The parchment browns and curls as her null walks by. Lysa sags and laughs and cries all at once. Jindal breathes through the urge to agree with a document that tastes exactly like the Foundation and has better grammar than anything she ever wrote. This is their smarter foe, she says, cheeks tear-streaked from the pressure of not believing neat things. They aren't just fighting our fields, they're filing in our name. Who are they? Alvarez asks. They're conceptual specialists, Vogue says, mouth dry. Dark apostles with pens. Tzeentch's pet notaries. They do not break walls. They change definitions. We kill them the way we kill anything that hides in definitions, Ashur says. We make our definitions loud. We sign with blood and dirt. We become specific in public. She goes to the Vox and speaks to the city. We are strangers, she says. We are not your rulers. We are not your priests. We are a brigade with tools. Our promise is simple. We hold doors shut, and we do not let paperwork make cowards of us. If a paper tells you to be obedient without a name attached, burn it. If a voice sounds like mine but the Sister of Silence frowns at it, spit on it. If someone asks you to sign something clean, put oil on your thumb and smear it instead. Messy is life. The governor comes on with his rough voice. Do as she says, he growls. Also, keep your heads down, and if you see a piece of paper nail itself to anything, shout for a grey soldier or a sister. Don't be a hero. Heroes get sermons written on them. Vogue watches Ashur speak and recognizes a preacher. It irritates her and makes her oddly glad. The choir of correction adjusts. Where they cannot change minds, they go for machines tied to minds. The tram lines flicker false calm. A sign displays a perfect evacuation route that leads to a locked door. A door opens on a thoroughfare that used to be and is now a drop into a shaft. Cade swears and throws breakers. We go manual. We walk the rails. We send men with whistles to lead lines. We pull the power out of their ink. The next hours are trench work in scripture. Alvarez leads with a whistle. 3 notes that mean left, 2 that mean stop, 1 that means down. His men hold batons with glowing tips because letters avoid light that moves. A sister walks 10 meters ahead. Papers curl as she passes. Men who wrote neat things go back to ugly printing because the neat thing in their hands wants to say something else if they round a letter too cleanly. At the manufactorum, tech priests wrap their flayed script robes with tarps and pick up wrenches. Today we are unlettered, one says, not unhappy. He hammers a panel until it opens and bypasses a subroutine that told a piston to keep time with Tzeentch. In the basilica, the priest lays a cloth over the lectern and refuses to uncover it even when someone screams that the Vox says to read from it now. Later, he says, when the silence stops breathing, Vox Psyker sits in a corner with a cup of water and stares at his own reflection until he can't see letters in it anymore. The wedge on the crown hums. The word-bearer's ship backs off like a wolf that lost a fang and doesn't want to lose the rest. Their last broadcast is a promise that they will come back with ink made from smarter blood. Ashur stands at the viewport and watches the sky forget some of its red. The ring above hums thin but steady, 11%. Enough to do this one more time only if they are perfect. Vogue comes to stand beside her. The 2 women do not speak first. The quiet is respect. You won, Vogue says finally, making it sound like a summon and a sentence both. We didn't lose yet, Ashur says. That is as far as I can claim. You claimed a city's allegiance for a day, Vogue says. You claim to care for my people. You will be judged on that. I expect to be, Ashur says. I am ready to be wrong for the right reasons and punished by people who understand why I chose anyway. Vogue glances at her. You will do well with the Golden Throne, she says, and does not explain why she chose those words now. The first victory is written into brick and breath. The ideology clash is written into the way men carry tools and blessings together. The smarter foe writes and is unwritten by mouths that refuse to speak its lines. The night on Graia shortens by 1 minute. It feels like a miracle, which is only statistics with a soul. The ring hums. The anchors throb like small hearts. The word-bearers leave a whisper behind that will be heard later by someone with ears for doom. The choir folds its parchments and ironies and goes to find more compliant worlds. In the vault at the edge of the city, the machine that woke earlier flexes a finger in dream. It remembers a man with a mask and a seal that said Inquisitor, and a word ringing in its skull that was not a prayer but a process. It remembers killing a god once in a desert of glass. It waits to hear a voice order it to live or die. Jindal sleeps sitting up with her visor off and her eyes taped shut so stray letters cannot crawl in. Alvarez dozes on a bench, boots on, helmet under arm, a whistle tangled in his fingers. Cade dreams of numbers behaving themselves and wakes to them doing what they always do, prosper under attention and wilt when ignored. Lisa lies under a white cloth on her roof because the brick inside is still warm. Orin curls next to her, prayer wheel under his palm. We did what they said, he murmurs. We did, she whispers back. We breathed and didn't read red. We lived. The Inquisitor stands alone before a small shrine she carries in her coat. 3 bones, a scrap of parchment, a drop of wax smudged by fingerprints. We found new allies, she tells a god who hears through 10,000 machines. We found new sins. Manual will follow, judgment later. For now, the city does not burn. For now, the ring supplies enough no to keep the world from being an argument it will lose. And in the cold between stars, something turns its head toward Graia and begins to calculate how to break a ring, not with heat or ink, but with a mirror. The briefing tastes like copper and coffee and the after-image of a bad memo burned out of retinas. They stand in a bunker under a manufactorum that still breathes heat, though its lungs are on pause. The walls sweat. The tactical hollow spits a topography of air more than ground. Field cones overlapped like scales. Seams mapped where seams should not be. Inquisitor Vogue looks at the map without blinking. Dr. Ashur folds her arms under her ribs because her hands tremble if she doesn't. Alvarez leans in close, pupils pinpricks from too much light and too little sleep. Jindal's visor is up. She wears taped gauze over her eyes with slits cut in so narrow it feels like looking through stitches. They're not done, Jindal says. The word bearers retreat, but they leave a specialist. He isn't a preacher. He's an auditor. He will come to the seam in our lattice, the one between Anchor 12 and the tramline node, where Hume pressure fluctuates. He'll mirror Anna back at us. Mirror, the governor repeats, the word sour on his tongue. Every anchor pushes on the warp, Kate says. A Tzeentchian Logothete can take that push, invert the vector, and use the reflection to write on our push. Imagine punching a wall and the bruise appearing on your own knuckles in the shape of a signature. That's what's coming. Standard counters? Vogue asks. Blanks mute raw warp, Jindal says, nodding at the sister. But this thing carries a procedural shell. Rigid, mirrored, legalistic. He won't speak at us. He'll countersign us. Our anchors will try to agree because they're built to agree with proofs. If we push harder, we make a deeper imprint. If we back off, we seed the seam, and he writes through it. How do we hurt it? Alvarez asks. We compel specificity, Jindal says. If he writes contain all variants, we force the sentence to become contain variants within volume X, time Y, with human override Z. He hates clauses. We make him argue details while we shoot him. Vogue exhales, almost a laugh. Fighting a demon with footnotes. We fight with what we have, Ashur says. Her voice is low, calm because anything else will break. This is the cost vector recurring. Janus's field is the right tool. It is also the lever he wants to pull to move us. Kate flips another view. Charge at 11. If we stiff-arm his mirror with brute Hume, we drop to 8. If we finesse 9. If we misstep, he imprints a protocol on the ring. Then every anchor sees every sapient as variance. No one breathes without our permission. We become what they say we are. Then don't misstep, Vogue says. They move to the seam. It's a sky bridge between Habstacks and the Basilica's northern cloister. Air greasy with soot. A river of refugees still flowing in two cautious lines, hand to shoulder, breath in 4 counts the Vox taught them. Anchor 12 hums under an arch of rusted saints. The tramline pylon throbs on the other side, fat cables like veins. The seam hangs between, an air gap where 2 kinds of no interfere and make a low moan only the teeth hear. The air hardens. He arrives like a correction. Armor like lacquered law. A torso plated in plates that look like pages bound in iron. Horns that curl like quotation marks around a skull that is a stamp. Wings that are not wings, but scrolls rolled into arcs and sealed with wax. His face is a baffle of polished blackstone, etched with letters that crawl toward legibility and stop at the line where the sister stands. He carries a blade like a gilded pen, nib split, ink welling red-black along the channel. In his other hand, a ledger chained to his wrist by sentences. The word bearers no names are weapons. He bears one used only in legal arguments that turn wars. Malphor, Logothete of the 9th Revision. A demon prince whose ascension was not by blood piled but by documents that taught a planet to consent to its own vivisection. He sets his ledger on the railing like a man laying a picnic cloth. Containment protocol, he intones in a voice that smells of hot wax and paper cuts. Revision. Present yourselves for countersignature. The sister takes one step forward. Her silence slides under his words and lifts them like a pry bar. The letters on his face hesitate. He squints at her and smiles, genuinely pleased. Ah, a blank. A lovely null hypothesis. Alvarez brings rifle to shoulder. The sight paints dots. The dots tremble on places that want to be called vital. He fires. Rounds clap the mirrored plates and dent them like old seals. Ink weeps. Malphor flicks his pen, and a line of red-black slices the air. The cut hangs without moving, a line in a ledger waiting for numbers to fall above it. Operators, Alvarez says. Pin him. Sisters breathe. Jindal. Writing, Jindal whispers. She holds an anti-mimetic flare. It looks like a cylinder of dull metal, with a strip of tape that says, "Don't look," and then under it, a smiley face for courage. On your mark. Cade's voice buzzes in Ashur's ear. Do not push the field. If you shove, he writes back. We need to modulate. Let the scene breathe. Let the sister set the tone. Malphor scratches his blade along the railing. Sparks become letters. The letters flow up Anchor 12's housing like ivy. The anchor hum slides to a key that tastes of cleaning fluid. Alvarez feels his trigger finger longing to rest, not because he's tired, but because efficiency is a narcotic. He breathes in through his nose and tastes it and says, "No," out loud, because hearing himself helps. Present your oath, Malphor invites. Friendly, as a notary witnessing love in cheap ink. You can keep it. I add one clause. No children die. You like that one? Say yes. Dr. Ashur hears it, and for a second, it is exactly her. The graphs flatten. The corridors never jam. The tramline never lies. The anchors decide. They cut. They seal. They end the wave. Her mind sees a city saved and a signature like a line through the dark. Clause, she says to her own head. Clause inside a clause. No children die because we rename childhood to permitted variance. No. Malphor turns his mirrored face toward the arc in the sky, though his eyes can't see it. Director, he says warm. What if I gave you the story where you never send anyone to die again? You enforce reality so hard that no one dreams more than you allow. It will be neat. You love neat. Ashur's fingers dig into the rail. We love the messy alive more. Then bleed, Malphor says, and writes. He draws the pen in a half moon. Air splits. A syllable falls. Contain. The seam amps. Anchor 12 leans to obey. The tram pylon answers in kind. The field between them hardens into glass. Refugees stumble. A child reaches out for her mother and hits a pain nobody else can see. She howls, mouth silent in the anchor's soundless moan. Don't push, Cade warns, because his whole life is wanting to push when a war presents itself. Alvarez doesn't. He drops the rifle, grabs a breacher, and runs at the invisible glass. The sister's silence spills around his boots like fog. He slams the breacher into the seam, and it bites because her null makes the wall forget it is perfectly defined. Crack spider. The girl's hand slides through and finds her mother's. Walk, breathe, Alvarez says. Horse. Walk. Malphor laughs, delighted. See, we can play. Clause for clause, footnote for footnote. But you will slip. You will want what I offer when you count dead. He lifts the pen. The nib shines like a saint's tooth. He writes again. a smaller line aimed at the Janus ring above. The field answers. The ring quivers. Cade slaps a kill on a feedback channel and burns another layer of skin off his palm, swearing through clenched teeth. He's writing on our bridge from the ground. He's using our own error correction to carry imprint up. Ingenious bastard. Jindal, Alvarez snaps. She flicks the flare's cap and throws it high. Anti-mimetic light blossoms like a flower that refuses to be seen. The letters on Malphor's face blur, as if his features were typeset on jelly. The pen hesitates. The ledger's chain pulls tight, as though someone on the other end yanks. He snarls. His mirrored cheek pits like glass exposed to sand. The sister steps into his aura, and her null rings like a struck bowl. Procedure, Malphor croons, almost pitying. He points the pen at the sister. You're a beautiful hole in the wrong place. I will fix you with a mirror. He flicks the nib once and throws a soundless spark. It isn't light or heat. It's the idea of reflection shoved into soft tissue. It hits the sister in her sternum. For a second she reflects herself. Her presence turns inward. The world around her swells with silent warp. The anchor hum ripples. A demonling peels out of the seam like a lizard from plaster and snaps at a refugee's ankle, disintegrating under a burst of salt shot from Lambda 4, but its existence was a flicker too close. The sister staggers. A bruise blooms like spilled ink under her collarbone. Alvarez catches her by the shoulder. Stay, he says, and means be. She nods, jaw clenched. Her null reasserts, narrower now, a cone with teeth marks. On the ring a glyph appears on the Janus bridge. So small a human eye would miss it. So loud a procedural system hears it like a bell. A counter sigil shaped like their own logo. 3 words bent into a checkbox. Secure, contain, protect. The checkmark hovers like a blade. If it lands, everything that breathes under their field becomes a box to tick. Cade, Ashur says. Trying, he says. Fingers flying on a dumb terminal that won't read the wrong thing because it refuses to read at all. He scrolls through a textless interface coded by a man 40 years dead and blessed by his hatred of fancy. He finds the listening port that error correction uses to ask anchors how they feel. He slices it. The glyph wavers. The checkmark drops and misses the box by a hair and lodges in the margin. Margin note, Jindal pants. He filed a note. He'll try again. Then we make him bleed, Alvarez says. He steps in. Malphor meets him with a slash that cuts an argument into the floor. You are not here. You are a statistic. Alvarez takes the cut on a plate soaked in apotropaic solution and shrugs off the sense of being a number. He answers with a blade of his own, a folding breacher knife he never stops carrying, because a knife is the oldest argument near, and he trusts old arguments. He cuts under the ledger. The chain snaps. The ledger falls open and pages fly, each a screaming face. The sister's silence smothers half the faces. The other half writhe. Jindal slaps a null tape across the spine. Words leak like pus. Malphor howls, offended as a bureaucrat whose stamp was stolen. He backhands Alvarez with the pen. It is a Warhammer when it wants to be. It cracks ribs. It leaves ink on the plate. Where the ink touches, the armor tries to classify the area as non-compliant. Alvarez's HUD, fresh, non-seduced glass, pings a warning. He rips the plate off and throws it into the seam, where it hardens into a perfect rectangle and wedges. Good. He grins through blood. Thanks for the block. Malphor drives the nib down into Anchor 12's housing. The anchor screams like a whistle in a pressure loop. Its Hume field flips phase and, for a breath, wants to suppress breathing as movement. 2 evacuees drop. Hands clutch throats. Jindal hits the housing with the butt of her flare and cracks a panel she knows will make the self-test cycle trip and reset. The hum stutters, reboots, returns to the grocery list of truth instead of the spreadsheet of compliance. The evacuees cough, puke, live. Price, Malphor says, cheerful. Every clause you refuse, I write somewhere you can't see. Noted, Ashur says, though she shakes. She knows the price tally is a ledger too. The duel skews. Malphor pulls from his pits a mirror shield like a filing cabinet door, swings it up to catch the sister's null, and angles it. The null reflects back at her, not as silence, but as self-negation, doubt. Am I a person? Her body asks without language. The hesitation is a hair. In fights like this, hairs are gulfs. Alvarez sees it and breaks the mirror with a round at point blank. Shards fall, each a line of policy shattered. They evaporate before hitting the deck, turning into footnotes that scuttle away like silverfish. Jindal throws a second flare and blows her own brain's cache of useful procedural phrases with it. For a minute, she doesn't know what form is. She clings to that ignorance like a ledge and moves inside it. Malphor stamps. It is not foot, not weight. It is authority made kinetic. The stamp lands on Alvarez's left shoulder where the IFF transponder lives. The chip sizzles. The network forgets him. On Ashur's UI, his blue dot winks out. For a second, he is nobody. Marcus, Ashur says too loud. I'm here. Alvarez grunts, insulted. He shares location via voice, the oldest network. Left of the seam, under St. Aurelia's poor sculpted elbow. Still ugly. Malphor lunges to right again, this time toward the ring, toward the Janus bridge. But the sister steps into his path and, with both hands, does nothing. Her silence swells like a bell tone reversed. The pen hits the null and bites nothing at all. The nib screams. The ledger's chain snaps again, as if a force that hates constants in the wrong place is cutting them. Jindal, Folk says on the net, voice like flint. You have 5 seconds to hurt him where he eats. Jindal rips the null tape off the ledger and slaps it over the pen's nib. Bad, she says. And the tape, which is just adhesive and a concept, holds for a count of 1. The concept is enough. Malphor's next stroke writes only air. His arrogance breaks for the first time. Alvarez sees the window and takes it. He drives the breacher knife in under Malphor's jaw, where mirrored plates meet legalese. The blade is steel, with sacrament engraved by a machine that believed because a human hand guided it. It bites, ink sprays. The diamond prince flinches. He is not mortal, he is wounded. The wound channel opens like a paragraph break. Through it, Malphor reaches, not with pen or ledger, but with exactly what he promised. A clause. It slides into Ashur's head like a paper cut. It says, you can save them all if you check 1 box. It feels like relief, flavored with clean. It is the same temptation in a sharper font. For 1 second, she almost signs. She doesn't. The price of not signing is immediate. Anchor 12. Hiccups and locks a door in a corridor where 100 people are queued. Only for a breath. Only for a reset. In that breath, 10 suffocate and fall. When the door opens, their bodies are neat. Someone lays them side by side. Someone else whispers, better than everyone dying. The whisper is not a demon. It is a human buying a story to live. Malphor laughs and bleeds ink. Every no has a dead child inside it, he purrs kind. Let me hold them for you. No, Ashur says, and it is a cut. Blood runs down her palm. She realizes she has clenched a hanger rail so hard she splits skin. She doesn't wipe it. She lets the blood drip on the console. There is something about seeing red that isn't ink that keeps her brave. Sacred sound rings. It is not Janus. It is not the Magnificat. It is the Basilica's bell. No hands pull the rope. The bell tolls once, deep. The sound is a carved thing. It slides through the seam, through the mirrored plates, through the ledger. Malphor flinches, not as a soldier, but as a clerk, scolded by a voice too big to file. The sister's eyes narrow. She does not smile. She breathes. Voke's pupils dilate. She hears other bells, 1,000, older, farther. She smells incense she last smelled in a chapel on Terra where the air never moves. She murmurs, "He knows," and does not say who. "Push," Ashur says finally. Just enough. Cade opens Anchor 12 a fraction, not with force but with schedule, on the beat of the bell. Hume climbs like a hymn sung by a congregation that knows the second verse. Malphor sways. The seam's glass softens. Refugees pass. Alvarez drives the breacher deeper. The pen scrapes his cheek on a return stroke and writes a line that will become a scar shaped like a check mark later. For now, it burns. The sister plants her feet and lets her null hum into his chest like a didgeridoo note under all the noise. Malphor retreats in a fold of air that refuses to be normal. He leaves a final gift. His stamp lands on the Janus bridge with a whisper. It doesn't catch on a checkbox. It catches on a margin note someone left in a human century. Remember, we protect people, not procedures. The stamp burns around those words and makes a halo that will be difficult to scrub. He's gone. The seam exhales. The ledger on the ground wiggles like a guillotined head and then melts like wax. The pen clatters, nib cracked, mending itself slowly. Alvarez sinks to a knee because the world is tilting. The sister presses fingers to her sternum, where the mirror burn purples black. She keeps her breathing even and her expression flat, because she learned long ago that letting faces speak invites pity she cannot use. Jindal leans on the anchor and vomits bile, because too much clean tried to live in her, and her body refused. On the ring, Cade sags. "Glyph on the bridge," he reports. "It's an imprint that wants to push us toward default lockdown anytime ambiguity rises. It's not code. It's a concept burned into error handling. We can rewrite, but we need an authority bigger than ours, or a ritual that affirms definitions in a way the ring respects." "An authority bigger than yours," Voke repeats. Her mouth is thin and dangerous. "I know one." Codex note. Tzeentchian logothetes employ mirrored denial to imprint compulsion vectors onto procedural systems. Resonance at field seams lets their audit glyph ride error correction to controllers, requiring sanction by a higher jurisdiction or physical nullization to clear. They gather again. The room is hotter. The governor looks older. The tech priest's hymn is off key because he broke a mechadendrite, brawling a demon, and secretly likes the imperfection. "Damage?" Ashur asks. "Corridor A13, Jindal says. 10 dead, 17 injured. Seam held. Anchor 12 rebooted. The ink on your bridge will spike compulsion when we are tired. It's wedged in the part of the system that hates ambiguity. We can't fix that with patches. We need a declaration." "A what?" Cade asks. "A statement so true inside this frame that even a demon's mirror has to reflect it," Jindal says, eyes closed. "We can state it. It does nothing. We can believe it. That helps. Or," she adds, tone resigned, "we can get someone the warp recognizes as capital T thrown to say it." Vogue doesn't make them beg. She does not relish the power. She lives in it. "You want to talk to the Emperor," she says. It is not a question. It is a sentence containing both blasphemy and good sense. Ashur swallows and leaves the word without flinching. "We need a judgment," she says. "We brought a lever into your sky. It is doing what we promised and also what you warned. Your church does not bow to us. We do not bow to it. There is one place both our oaths recognize with fear and gravity. If we carry this imprint out of here, It rides our ring into the next world we try to help. I will not be the vector that turns a city into a checklist. We need absolution or rebuke. We need a rule we can bind the ring to. The Golden Throne is not a confessional, the tech priest says, scandalized. It is a machine, Vogue says, shutting him down with a look. And a god, and a man dying forever for our sins. It can do judgment even when it does nothing else. Price, the governor says, voice hollow. What is the price of taking strangers with a lever to Terra? Everything, dear, Vogue says softly. But the alternative is letting a demon stamp live in their star and travel to other worlds. I prefer my sin loud, and judge to my sin quiet and clean. Ashur looks at Alvarez. He nods once. He's pale under brown skin, sweat glossed, armor sticky at the seam where ink got in and he tore it off before it could tell the rest of him how to behave. He looks at the sister. She inclines her head, wincing. The mirror burn will take more than time to fade. He looks at Jindal. She's writing on a paper bag with a pencil because she can't trust screens yet. She writes, "We pick hard," and underlines it. "We go," Ashur says. "We will leave enough anchors in low power to keep corridors open. We will hand controls to your mechanicus with instructions that require oil and thumbs, not words. We will go to Terra. We will ask." "Ask," Vogue echoes, and the word is heavy. She taps her signet. "I can call an escort, not custodians, not yet, but sisters, sororitas, a small lance, enough to deter pirates and press you through blockades. The Adeptus Astartes telepathica will complain about your ring near their choir. I don't care. Janus can move at sublight on fumes," Kate says. "Warp. Our math hates it. Their warp hates us. We can hitch to a fleet bubble if they tolerate us. We can run cold and be ugly. Ugly is survival," Jindal says. "We go," Vogue says. "But hear me, this is not just a pilgrimage. It is judgment. If Terra says burn, I burn you. If Terra says kneel, you kneel. If Terra says serve, you serve. That is the price for asking. I do not have to explain fairness to the director of procedure." Ashur does not pretend. "I accept," she says. "I want to still want to accept later, when the bill arrives. The bill arrives early." Malphor's stamp on the bridge hums in the silence. It adds weight to easy choices and makes hard ones look like vanity. Every time an operator reaches for a neat fix, something in their nerves warms. The sister walks through rooms and calls them. She is one woman. There are many rooms. The word bearers are gone for now. The choir of correction leaves a single parchment nailed to a door with no nail halfway up a stair. A sister picks it off with 2 fingers and drops it in a bucket of holy water. It dissolves into the taste of copper and old paper. The mechanicus roll out reliquary tools and learn the anchors by touching them with wrenches and muttering until the machines purr. They paint small aquila in corners where the housings won't mind. A tech priest lays a servo skull against a panel and listens to the hum. "It speaks plainly," he says, startled. "I have never loved a heretical machine. I do not love this one. I can work with it." The governor signs a decree in ink that bleeds through cheap paper. The strangers have leave to hold 3 corridors and 12 squares. Any who cut cables will find their fingers cut by the next day's clock. A dock worker reads it and laughs, then keeps his fingers because nobody is in the mood to test the governor's promise. Vogue stands in a small chapel that was once a dead-end stair. She stares at a candle with a flame like a nail head. "We go to Terra," she says. "We are not ready. We go." Her psyche breathes and does not vomit. The sister stands outside and counts the breaths of people in line. If the count stutters, she steps in and steadies it by being a gravity. Alvarez walks the seam one last time. He looks at the place where Anchor 12 wanted to suck breath out of children and feels the line of a future where he let it, just for a minute, to make the map tidy. He grinds that future under his boot. Jindal sits cross-legged on a grate with her notebook and writes the words she nearly agreed to, then crosses them out hard enough to tear the page. She keeps the torn page. She wants to remember almost signing for the rest of her life. They load. Janus folds anchors inward like fingers curling into a fist. The ring above detaches 3 pods to the Mechanicus, gifts with manuals written in grease pencil. Pictures of where thumbs go. "We will come back for those if we live," Kay tells a tech priest. "If not, use them on storm days. Don't read anything that pops up unless it smells wrong." "It all smells wrong," the priest says. "That is why we are good at this." The Magnificat slides under the ring's shadow with the patience of an old battleship. Guns are quiet. Lights are low. The Inquisitorial pennant snaps too crisply for the lazy drift of air. It does what pennants do. Preens for the story. A small, high-shouldered flotilla falls in. 2 escort frigates, 1 barge with a choir blistered along its spine under gold grills, a sororitas transport shaped like a coffin with rockets. Vox clicks and coughs as channels decide who will pretend to be in charge. Voke boards the Ark with sanction seals in a case and a sister at either shoulder. "You will not point your ring at the choir except at my count," she says. "You will not ask questions if you cannot keep from answering honest. You will not try to index the Emperor. If I see a single graph of my God's face, I open you and drop coal in." "Understood," Ashur says. "We will be good guests." "Be small," Vogue says. "For once." "Small," Ashur agrees, and means it in the sense of humility that sometimes saves empires. Lisa stands in a crowd that waves with the flat motion of hands hating to say goodbye. She can see the ring only as a line of shadow cutting a lighter blue into darker. Orin waves his prayer wheel and calls, "Come back," because children believe invitations are contracts. "We will try," Ashur says on a channel nobody hears but her. Janus groans. The ring is a crown that doesn't want to sit on anyone's head. Its lights dim to war economy. Navigation burns are short, precise, miserly. It slides into formation like a man sliding into a pew when he isn't sure he'll be welcome. They leave Graia's gravity. Silence in space is a cliché. Janus hums. The choir ship hums in a key that sets teeth on edge. The sororitas transport hums like a threat and a lullaby. The Magnificat hums the way old engines hum when they have killed and are not ashamed. Between those hums, there is a thread Ashur hears that no one else on her bridge recognizes. It is a bell's aftersound stretched thin over light years. Jindal sleeps for 6 minutes and wakes with a word in her ear. Mirror. She reaches for her pencil and writes, "Mirror foe." And under it, a question mark inside a warning triangle. She doesn't know she's drawn the emblem of a faction she has never met. They are not to Terra yet. They have to pass through places with other masters. At the convoy's edge, a shadow tilts. It is not chaos. It is not Xenos. It is so neat it hurts. A keel cuts a straight line into the cluster, grey-white, shuttered. The Vox pings a code that is not a hail. It is a warrant. Seal, an eye inside a hexagram inside a cog. Ordo Hereticus, adjunct to the Officio Assassinorum Logistics Flotilla, auditing transit permits for assets that change the warp. The message is a single sentence, present for optimization. Vogue's jaw flexes. "Mirror," she says low. "Not the demon's mirror, a human one, optimizers. Crusade-born ideologues who trim worlds like hedges to keep the shape pleasing to their god of order." "Name?" Ashur asks. "Inquisitor Severine Holt," Vogue says. "Her flaw looks like your virtue. She will suggest a cleaner way to save people. She will not call it tyranny. She will call it love. Dr. Ashur sets her hands on the rails so she won't fidget. Alvarez checks drawers for knives and conversation. The sister rolls her shoulder and winces at the bruise. She doesn't hide it. Jindal tapes her eyes narrower. Cade looks at the charge readout, 8%, and pretends he isn't thinking how easy the choice would be if someone just reached up and switched them off forever. The flotilla slows. Boarding clamps bite. Air cycles. Doors prepare to be doors. The duel was with a demon. The temptation was tailored. The refusal cost blood, breath, and a bruise in the ring's memory that hums when tired hands reach for easy answers. The sacred intervention was a single bell toll that said, reach up, then prove you deserve to exist. Aftermath scrawls its orders. Go to the only place that can tell a machine and a church how to speak to each other without killing the most important third party. Men. They are not yet judged. They are on their way to a throne that has a way of making even victors die smaller in the telling. And something with a mandate that looks like theirs in a mirror steps onto the deck, smile like a scalpel, writes like knives hidden up both sleeves. The convoy breathes like a small city taught to speak in whispers. Steel bones creak. Hymnals hiss through the choir ship's vents. Janus runs dim, her ring throttled to an ember, braided machinery turning as if to grind its own doubts into fuel. Medicae bays fill with ordinary heroics. Alvarez lies on a cold slab, while a Marcos biologist pulls ink out of the checkmark cut on his cheek, with a forceps that chant to themselves. The bruise over the sister's sternum blooms black-purple. A hospitaller moves careful fingers and listens to silence like a pulse. Cade's palm is bandaged into a hive map he jokes about, and then doesn't when his hand shakes too long. Jindal sleeps with gauze over her eyes and a pencil tucked behind one ear because she doesn't trust dreams to be letterless. In a tiny chapel welded into a pressure bulkhead, candles gutter and drip grey wax. Inquisitor Voke kneels on a bar of iron and stares at a small icon scratched by a bored deckhand, a double-headed eagle whose heads are uneven. Dr. Ashur stands in the doorway and watches the gold flicker on Voke's cheekbone. You're praying for permission, Ashur says quietly. I'm praying for honesty, Voke answers without looking up. Permission I can take, honesty I must receive. Honesty about cost, Ashur says. Voke's mouth crooks. And about dogma. My dogma says you are a blade without a handle. My eyes watched you cut the thing that needed cutting without carving me by accident. My dogma says that's luck. My eyes say that's training. Both can be true, Ashur says. Luck favors the trained. Cost, Voke repeats. You spend charge, you spend souls. You refused a neat miracle that would have turned your ring into a tyrant. I admire that. It makes what comes next harder. What comes next is judgment, Ashur says. We choose to ask for it. We choose to bleed under it. You say we like you are the only ones who chose, Voke says, finally glancing up. You dragged me into choosing with you. Ashur nods once. Yes. Noise falls along the convoy's skin. Sirens of courtesy, not alarm. A hard chime cuts through. Attention, says a voice in 6 dialects and 1 machine code. Ordo Hereticus flag vessel chaste edict requests inspection and optimization conference. Present for efficiency. Voke's spine straightens like a drawn sword. Severin Holt, she says, and the name tastes like polished bone. Mirror with a smile. The docking collar knits. Air cycles. Doors open like lips about to say the word no. 2 teams stand to receive and not submit. Alvarez in scarred plating. The sister with helm off and bruise in bloom. Ashur with hands at ease and knuckles whitening. Jindal blinking against light through a narrow slit of gauze. Voke at the center. Stormcoat clean, by will alone. Inquisitor Severine Holt steps through like a solution. Crisp carapace traced with hexagrams. No ostentation. No skulls. A cuffed data slate on her wrist. Eyes like a start of quarter audit. Behind her, adepts bearing identical cases march in step. The rhythm of middle managers who believe in knives. Voke, Holt says with a pleasant antiseptic smile. You asked for escort. I brought improvement. You always do, Voke says. Meet Director Dr. Rhea Ashur, bearing a ring that makes your categories itch. Holt turns a smile without adjusting it. Director, I admire what you did in the Manufactorum. Your heuristics are elegant. Your outcomes are suboptimal. Because I didn't let my ring check a box over a world, Ashur says, voice dry. Because you insisted on human variance, Holt corrects. Variance fattens casualty curves. Allow me to trim. You propose optimization, Voke says. Define. Holt gestures with the data slate. It hums in a key that makes Cade's bandage itch. Procedure set. Consolidate psychers under sedation within your field. Reclassify evacuee lines into ranked cohorts. Deny corridor access to cohorts with lowest productive capacity until threat diminishes. Strip sanctuaries of icons that conflict with procedural signage. Repurpose your Janus ring to enforce a 60-second decision window across city grid. No dithering. We save 15% more at current rates. And we sign a clause that says the ring decides what dithering is, Ashur says. The clause will grow teeth. Holt spreads hands. Teeth bite chaos and doubt. Your bruise says doubt bites back. The sister says nothing. Her silence stretches between them like a wire. Holt's adepts shift, feeling their thoughts go quiet and disliking the unscheduled pause. We are bound for Terra, Voke says. You may walk or you may watch. You will not rewrite their ring without judgment. Holt's smile does not move. I am judgment. The throne is, Voke said. Then let us expedite, Holt says smoothly. Accept an optimization package now as a pilot. Demonstrate obedience. It will ease the throne's answer. Ashur tips her head. Obedience to what? To you. To an alternative of our own oath. To the Imperium's survival, Holt says without heat. Your oath and mine are instruments, Director. The song is survival. Survival with souls, Voke says softly. Souls are variables, Holt says. We account for them. Jindal steps half behind Alvarez, voice small through gauze. She's singing our tune into a major key, she murmurs. Pretty. Wrong. Holt watches the sister for a beat. Eyes not hostile. Your nulls are productive. In my model, I increase null deployment by 20% and pair them with on-site decision engines. No letters, dials, lights. Humans are bad at passing letters during panic. On that we agree, Ashur says. But your lights will point toward a room you named small and locked from your desk. Holt's adepts open their identical cases. Each holds a polished hexagrammatic plate, etched with neat grooves. Prototype dampers, one recites. Installed on anchor housings, they will force Hume fields to prefer compliant flow. No suggestion. Enforcement. Cade looks at Ashur. It is a plea and a warning. If we bolt those, the ring will learn their grammar. Even if we scrape them off later, the preference remains. Preference for clean, Jindal says through clenched teeth. We drown. Severine, Voke says. Stand down, or stand aside. Refusal noted, Holt says, still pleasant. We will proceed to conference in your sanctuary deck. You will find my arguments merciful. They walk. The corridor feels like the inside of a logic gate. Holt's escort falls in. A quiet man without insignia carries a pressure case without reflection. He smells like solvent and death. Alvarez clocks him and files the posture. Assassinorum logistics, not an Eversaw, not yet. The conference room used to be a mess hall. Sister Hospitallers turned it into a sanctuary with cloth and candles. Volk stands at the head of a long table that has seen field dressings and fighting over food. Holt's adepts fan out and place the hex plates at measured distances as if setting cutlery. Holt plugs her slate into a port. Exhibit A. Graia casualty projections under Janus unoptimized. Exhibit B. Optimized. Exhibit C. Optimized with compliance enforcement for liturgical conflict. Volk slaps a hand down over the port and disconnects it. No slides, she says. Speak. Holt inclines her head. She does not mind. Your ring is a marvel. It is also a hazard. I offer 3 constraints. A 70-meter cap on field overlap to prevent emergent autonomy. A denial of field expansion within holy precincts unless sanctified by ordo approval. And a redefinition of your term civilian to exclude active psychers and non-contributing dependents during cataclysm conditions. Non-contributing? Ashur repeats quiet. At whose scale? At mine, Holt says without shame. Until the throne says otherwise. You are mirror, Volk says, recognizing the cut. You offer them what they almost took. Neatness, with a hymnal printed on it. Neatness that saves, Holt says. The room cools by degrees. The choir ship's hum rises. Alvarez feels the old, reliable thud in his chest that says a fight is coming, even if the people in it keep their voices soft. Jindal writes a word on a napkin in pencil. Nope. Then turns it over so the letters can't climb back into her eyes. It is a short clash because something older than audit speaks first. The lights bend. The choir ship's blister blooms a sound that rings bones without moving air. Everyone who has ever felt the Astronomicon in their sleep feels it now awake. A spear of exquisite, unarguable direction. Holt's slate blanks. Her hex plates hum, not with readiness, but with astonished obedience to a signal they are designed to respect above any optimization. The pressure case in the quiet man's hands warms and clicks, arming, and then chimes a fault tone as if embarrassed. Sisters of Silence walk past the hatchway in a slow file, their presence braided together until silence is a rope. They do not look in. The rope hum pulls like a tide. The choir's voices are not words, but in the silence meaning stands up straight. Reach the throne. Holt's eyes narrow. She listens with the expression of a woman who measures signals by habit. She holds up a finger as if to ask a machine for another minute. The machine says no. A tiny sigil burns itself into her slate's casing. An aquila no human hand drew. She hisses soft and delighted. Admonition, she whispers, a little awed. All signatories to stand down, not rescinded, deferred. We go. Volk nods as if she had won an argument by staying silent. Ashur exhales and does not smile. The quiet man closes the pressure case. He looks disappointed like a carpenter who didn't get to use his favorite tool. On the transit, discipline tightens. Volk's chatter drops to coded clicks. The choir ship pushes a corridor through the warp so precise the bones of Janus feel aligned. The ring hums thin and compliant. Cade stares at the readout. 8%. Ashur touches the rail and whispers a promise she means to keep because believing is the only way this machine chooses not to fail. Terra rises like a verdict. Void storms whisker the system like a crown of static. Ranging beacons knit a tapestry of hollow stars closer than eyes prefer. The Astronomicon is a wound that sings. The palace is not a building. It is a continent of intent fused to stone. Mountain ridges beveled into battlements, arteries of light flowing toward a heart no map measures. They pass through the Jovian cordon. Titan guns watch with sleepy malice. The chaste edict's codes pass like a known scent through old memories. Magnificat bows its prow. Janus presents herself like a wrong tool tidied for inspection. ring throttled to a halo that barely glows. Docking is pageantry under threat. Narrow corridors of allowed approach shift in bands of gold, then red, then gold again. 100 vox choirs sing the same syllable, with variations nobody notices, unless they intend to approach wrong. The flotilla slides on rehearsed lines. Janus fits into a cradle over a sump of night, where ships go if they displease. Atmo hisses. Heat like breath fills the bay. The doors open on a ramp wide enough for a regiment and clean enough that the reflection of gold looks like sunrise on polished ice. Custodians stand at intervals, halberds as tall as their patience. Their armor makes everyone into their smaller version just by existing. Blanks attend them. Sisters of silence in cream and iron. Faces calm. Eyes like the moment the surgeon says, "You're waking up now." There is no speech. There is only movement. The procession forms itself around people who know where to stand when the world is watching. Holt with placid smile shut like a book. Voke with chin up and hand on signet. Ashur with hands open. Alvarez moving like a door that will not be broken in from tomorrow. The sister breathing even and holding her bruise like a badge. Jindal walking with eyes closed and hands trailing a rail to keep her from reading the palace into herself. They cross under vaults painted with battles that lie and truths that prefer masks. They pass through air that was last breathed by saints and traitors. They move into a hall where everything is shaped to make men quiet. It works. A silent audience with a dying god is not stillness. It is a pressure differential of meaning. They stand at the threshold where mortals stand. The throne is a telescope pointed inward and a furnace pointed outward. Metatronic pylons glimmer with constantly rewritten prayers. Golden cables shiver with effort burned like oil. The corpse is a man, and more than a man, and also a rumor that refuses to die. He does not speak. He occupies. A custodian raises a hand. It is both permission and threat. Vogue goes to one knee. Holt bows with exact metric. Ashur inclines like a student in a lab. Alvarez bows his head because it feels less like obeisance and more like letting a roof pass over without taking his hat off. Jindal keeps eyes slitted and still sees too much. The sister looks without seeing. Gnolls do not pass into the throne's hunger the way psychers do. She stands awake. The first thing that happens is a subtraction. The stamp Malphor put on Janus's bridge burns without flame and is not there. The ring's desire to check boxes becomes shyness in the face of older order. Cade's breath leaves him in a sob he had not previously reserved for gods. The second thing is a rewriting that is also a mercy. Every anchor in the ring that wanted to treat breath as deviation feels a hand lift off its throat. Anchors do not feel, they behave. Today they behave like they felt forgiveness. Vogue feels the old awe, the pressure that makes zealots into knives and knives into relics. She thinks the name she never says without fear. Master. She does not ask for permission to kill or spare. She asks that her killing be useful. Ashur feels an answer that is not language, but arithmetic shown with the sky. She sees 3 curves in one heartbeat. One ends in a tidy line that becomes a prison. One becomes a bright vignette of many small fires, each trying to be true and failing differently. One is a vector she has not let herself draw because the cost line crosses too close to her pride. The answer is not yes. The answer is choose and bleed accordingly. Alvarez feels nothing holy. He feels a calm like the moment before a clean shot. He thinks of a corridor door and 10 neat bodies. He thinks, not again, and the throne does not soften the thought into hope. It is a contract. Jindal feels a room in her head open that letters have been renting without her consent. The tenants leave through a window that wasn't there. She sits down on the floor and weeps because the rent is paid up and she has the key back. The sister's bruise warms. The mirror bite loosens. It will scar. Scars are persuaders. She feels the throne as a temperature she prefers and as a gravity she can recruit. Holt straightens last. Her smile is smaller. Something burned off her like sugar on a pan. Not her ambition. The wrong gloss. The exchange reframes morality and war, not with new commandments, but with a taut boundary drawn around means. Holt's optimization becomes a tool with a leash. She feels the leash and resents the pull and obeys, because this is the one thing she respects more than her model. Vok's zeal is given a stop word she knows by heart and hates: patience. Ashur's oath is forced to name the survival she protects, not as numbers, but as faces braided into policy. It is not protect outcomes. It is protect people and let outcomes be earned, not seized. They stand under gold and understand that they have been seen. On a high dais, a sister captain turns her head a degree, and it is more horrible and more merciful than any sermon. She raises a hand. A librarian behind her puts the hand they don't show inside their robe and clenches a rosary so hard beads crack. A custodian places his halberd on the floor, and the small click is like the word Amen. Power scaling interlude. 2. Provisional Terra sanction binds Janus to operate fields only under declared human authority on site, witnessed by a blank. No Hume saturations within the choir's passive range. Mimetic channels must be physical, voice or ink, not light. Anchor overlaps capped unless a null stands at the seam. Any attempt to redefine civilian without named consent from a local sovereign triggers immediate shutdown. The ring cannot interpret prayer, liturgy, or sacred icons as variants. Holt bows just enough. Acknowledged, she says softly. Vok lowers her head and lets an old ambition go. In another life, she would have used this moment to kill a rival. Today, she accepts a mandate shared. We will convey, she says. Ashur stands with eyes burning and a line down her palm where her blood dried. She doesn't open her mouth. She nods and means it. They turn, not dismissed. They are still being watched and always will be, but revectoring. The way out of the hall feels downhill. In a Medici antechamber half a mile of marble later, Vok and Ashur stand with the sister while a hospitaller wraps new linen over old bruise. Cost versus dogma, Vok says, voice hoarse. Dogma says kneel and obey. Cost says get up and make a mess that saves. He said both. He said both in a way that makes me useful. He said we are not gods, Ashur says, and gave us rules that prevent us from pretending. He said, go back, the sister says. Quiet, first words in hours. He said, reach the throne to get permission to return. He said, do not linger and make a church of a hospital. Vok's eyes crease. Yes. Holt waits in a corner, hands folded, adept calm intact and thinner. Optimization package, withdrawn pending further data, she says, almost rueful. I will write the memo that spares you for now. Try not to make me wrong. Help us make you right, Ashur says. Holt considers and surprises both of them. Send me your constraints. I will bleed my model to fit them. If we both obey the same leash, my knife cuts cleaner when you hand it to me. Deal, Vok says before Ashur can. This is not a marriage. It is a truce that translates. They walk back into the bay. The ring hangs in her cradle like a dog that has decided not to bite for a minute, because the hand on his head is heavy in a way it remembers from puppyhood. Cade runs diagnostics by turning dials and reading needles, each painted with little Aquila by a tech priest who thought labels without letters would honor both gods. Marcus Alvarez leans on a railing and looks out over Terra's spine. He lets himself enjoy beauty, for once, without hating it for being a hostage. We go back, he says, to a city he does not own but feels responsible for. To people who held hands when we asked, Jindal says, eyes still taped narrow, pencil still behind her ear, voice restful for the first time in days. And to a machine in a vault that woke when we sang a new key at it. Machine, Holt asks, not missing a slip. A rumor, Vogue says. Later. Now, says a custodian at the ramp. Voice like a gong wrapped in velvet. Go, not dismissal. Deployment. The flotilla moves. The choir pulls lanes tight with a hum that tastes like clean teeth. The Magnificat paces like a bull that has learned new tricks. The chaste edict falls in without commentary. Holt's smile is small and real, an expression that is less about improving than ensuring somebody else doesn't lie. Janus lights to the edge of her leash. The ring hums with new prohibitions stitched into her voice. When Cade reaches for an old habit, the dial resists his hand. He thanks a god he doesn't have and adjusts. They leave Terra's gravity with a blessing that is not words and not warmth and not permission. It is a weight shared. Midway back to Graia, the choir makes a small sound like a boundary rung with a finger. The warp licks at the convoy and then sulks. Even clever things know when a hand is on the back of their neck. Holt watches Ashur on a secondary deck, while the sister checks bulkhead seals by touching them. He changed you, Holt says without accusation. He named us, Ashur says. Names can be cages. This one is a bridge. I still prefer cages for monsters, Holt says. Me too, Ashur says. Just not for cities. Fair, Holt admits. And it is not a surrender. It is a vector. They pass Saturn, where rings cut light into syllables Janus could learn to sing and is forbidden to try. They pass Mars, where 1,000 forges light and go dark in time with prayers and machine calculus. They pass the edge where men pretend void ends and it does not. The throne's admonition fades to a hum, only those who listen know how to hear. It remains enough. At the convoy's mouth, a ripple like a held-in cough travels through the escort frigates. Fox whispers, return vector achieved, enemy signatures low, Graia alive. The ring answers with a tone that is not proud and not humble. It is ready. And hanging at the edge of Graia's gravity well, something waits that heard the same bells and decided to make its own. A ship, wearing a crown of scavenged blackstone and purity seals, sings two notes in harmony, compliance and revolt. Its master is neither demon nor saint, but a man with a ledger of his own, who believes murder becomes moral if you optimize it correctly. Severine, Vogue says over the internal net. You wanted a pilot. You will get a field test. Holt smiles without baring teeth. Let us protect people, she says, without quibble now, and the word people does not collapse under definitions. Janus hums. The leash around her throat feels like a promise instead of a collar. The ring rolls and points home. The ship in the dark wears the crown of rules and bad stone. Its hull is a manuscript bound in plates. Purity seals snap in the vacuum like red reeds. No daemon choir roars, only disciplined pings answer themselves in neat intervals. Its vox announces nothing and radiates permission requests into the void. Civil, relentless, hungry. Identification, Vogue says. Lexarch Anselm Prine, says the neat voice that arrives on every channel at once. Pallid office, administratum concordat. Temporary mandate under ordo hereticus. Writs annexed. I've seen your miracle. I will make it safe. Present ring for integration. Integration, Holt repeats dryly. He means obedience with lacquer. Your blackstone crown, Jindal murmurs, peering through gauze, is stuffed with quotes he doesn't believe. He thinks citations make sin the right shape. Prine's ship slides into Graia's well like a blade, learning a throat. On the world, The lattice hums thin at Janus's leash. The basilica bells are quiet, as if holding their breath. The people do not run. They move in lines because they learned how to live yesterday, and that knowledge is still warm. 3 paths. Ashur hears again, not as words but as shapes behind her eyes. She stands on the bridge, hand on rail, palm scar the colour of dried cherries. The throne's silent calculus returns with the clarity of a good instrument. 1 path arcs away from Graia. Return. Cut the lattice. Fold Janus home. File a report. Let memory sand its edges down until this day is a policy, and the ring becomes a museum piece that never saved another child. It promises safety. It smells of cowardice with clean hands. The 2nd path splits like a river around a rock. Free agent. Refuse leash. Open the ring to the full stone grocery list of truth. Check 1 billion boxes before anyone writes a clause. Prine will call it rebellion. Vogue will call it heresy. Holt will call it a test case. The survival curve is high for a week. Then it becomes a prison with beautiful metrics. The 3rd path is a bridge suspended from an old sky. Sanction servant. Bind Janus in law older than ash. Take the leash and the witness clause. Accept oversight you cannot predict. Bleed in public so people know the difference between your oath and the machine's appetite. The survival curve is jagged. The line crosses through pride and comes out community. The bill has no maximum. Choose, the quiet in her bones says. Choose and bleed accordingly, she whispers. She breathes and chooses the bridge. Transmission, Ashur says. Vogue nods and gives the channel. Dr. Rhea Ashur's voice goes out over Graia, over the ring, over Prine's ship like chalk on a door. Janus is Terra sanctioned, she says clear. We will not integrate under your crown. We operate with null witness, voice and ink orders, no recode of civilian, no suppression of prayer, and no city-scale lockdown without named sovereign consent. If you try to nail paper to our door and call it salvation, we burn the paper and save the people. Prine answers without anger. Director, I admire your boldness. It is amateur. I bring orthodoxy. I bring an Aquila that bites. I bring the sum of Rome. Then land and show us where you bleed, Vogue says. Or stay up there and I write your name in a book I keep for men who like levers. Levers move the Imperium, Prine says, gently amused. Coming about for integration? His ship's crown tilts. Doors that are not demonic, but administrative open in space. A rain of tidy objects falls. Hex plates in the thousands, each wrapped in waxed parchment with a stamped consent line. They deploy like seeds, small anchors made of blackstone scrap and iron grillwork. They are calibrated to look like help. They will latch to our housings, Kate says, eyes narrow. They'll learn our frequencies and teach us new manners. Scramble, Alvarez says. Anchors to white cloth marks only. Sister at every seam. Mechanicus. Hands-on with wrenches, not litanies, unless you can sing and swing at once. Tech priest spits static laughter. We can, one promises, and rolls. On the ground, the first plate hits a tram pylon and clings with magnetic zeal. A parchment unfurls like a tongue. Signed to consent, it says in perfect local low Gothic. The Sister of Silence reaches it first. She rests her palm on the wax and waits. The wax curls and darkens without heat. The plate hum drops. Alpha 3 puts a round through its hinge, and it falls like paper that forgot it was metal. In the square by the basilica, Lisa sees a plate land on a saint's plinth. She moves without thinking. Orin grabs her sleeve and points. "Grey soldier," he says. They take it off. We breathe. She nods and puts her hands on 2 more hands in the line, as if pulling current into a circuit. Prine's plates come smarter. Some are pious and request signatures. Some are silent and watch anchors with a cat's patience. Some bristle needles and prick the hewn field like a doctor who thinks pain teaches cooperation. Janus feels every prick and stiffens in the way of machines obeying new constraints with dignity. Less range, more pulse, seams steep with nulls. Ship to ship, Holt says, stepping to the rail. Her slate is off, her mouth is precise. Severine Holt to Lexarch Prine. Your authority is provisional and now rescinded. Terra lodges an admonition on your seal, present for censure. My writs predate your admonition by 4 minutes, Prine says, not cruel, just faithful to a clock. I am not disobedient, I am punctual. Observe, my optimization increases survival by... Shut up, Vogue says, and cuts his voice from her bridge like lopping a vine. Boarding, Alvarez asks. Boarding, Vogue agrees. I am done arguing with men who like sign deaths. Split, Ashur says. We go 3 ways. Ground. Alvarez and sister to seam clusters with dampers and hospitallers. Pull plates with hands, not letters. Arc. Cade and Jindal purge the bridge imprint with the new claws bound by Terra. Painfully, if we have to. Call it a purge and a wedding. Strike. Vogue. Halt. And a null witness cut to his crown and hammer his doctrine with ours. Witness, the sister says, touching the bruise and standing straighter. I walk. Action, Vogue says. All iron. They move. On the ground, Alvarez leads with a tuned whistle and a baton with a glowing tip. The baton's light is a walking negation of neat lies. Where it passes, papers furl. Around him walk guardsmen and skitarii and hivemen with sticks and sisters who stand still until the world decides to be polite. He pulls plates like a dentist who hates teeth. He passes them to athletes in grey who learn to throw them into piles where nulls sit and breathe them into quiet. A plate learns. It presents a small window with a line. Would you like to save your child? YN. Alvarez sees a man's hand twitch toward it. He slaps the hand gently. We already are, he says. You're faster if you look at me. The man looks at him and cries. Alvarez nods once, and they both keep moving. In a factory stare, a plate hums and itches at the corners of an anchor. Jindal arrives at a run, visor slit. She sits down, puts the plate in her lap like a disobedient cat, and tells it a story, with a little screwdriver, 2 jumpers, and a smear of null tape. Claws, she whispers, and the plate stars itself with an error. She pats it. Better. In the basilica, a priest anoints a housing with oil and kisses the aquila he painted yesterday in a corner, where the housing doesn't mind. Bless you for being ugly, he tells the anchor. The anchor hums like a dog. A plate lands at his feet. He steps on it with his boot and then with a small hammer. It squeals and shuts up. Above, Cade stands in front of the Janus bridge, Rax with a sister at his side, her breath audible. He pulls a lever labelled with a drawn aquila and a thumbprint. The ring whines, then settles into a new song. The glyph Malphor burned hums. Cade closes his eyes and speaks the clause the throne wrote into his bones, not as piety, but as law. We protect people, not procedures. Any ambiguity resolves to mercy human witnessed. The glyph flickers. The urge to check boxes like it is love dims around its edges. It still wants to whisper when Cade is tired. The sister puts her palm on the console and breathes. The whisper has to go somewhere else to live. Purge, Cade says through his teeth. One more rung. He flips the override. The ring's self-test bites hard into its own mirrors. Cold sweats break out across 6 decks. Men who love clean have to look at dirt. They keep their hands still and watch. A line of letters tries to grow on a passive screen. The sister presses her palm. Letters depart like fleas drowned. On the chaste edict, Holt laces her gauntlets with a rosary wrapped twice around the wrist, not as devotion, though it is, but as a mnemonic for tempering a trigger finger. She, Vogue, and the sister take a spear of teleporter light into Prine's crown. It tastes like legal paper left in the rain. They land in a hallway that expects applause for existing on schedule. Hex plates line the walls like mirrors. Parchments stick to corners with wax that smells like sandalwood and control. A man in grey steps forward, smiling the way a guard dog smiles at a child who is afraid. Please consent to the improvement. Vogue shoots him in the leg and keeps walking. We consent to nothing, she murmurs. Holt pauses and leaves a small bandage in the man's hand. For infection, she says, and he nods, grateful through tears because disobedience and kindness together make more sense than any optimization. The trio reaches the crown's throat, a room of black stone shaped into a rose window that eats light polite. At its hub, Lexarch Prine stands with his hand on a wheel that releases plates into the void. He looks younger than his voice. 35, hair oiled, eyes clear, faith like a glass, flaws like hairline cracks. Inquisitors, he says, and inclines, respectful. Director by deputy, sister witness, welcome to compliance. You will shut it down, Holt says. You will shut it down, Vogue echoes, the steel variant of the same sentence. Prine's smile is a fraction pained. I cannot while the city is under threat. We must push decisions into windows. We must prevent dithering. We must. The sister steps forward. We must witness, she says soft. Her null rolls across the room like a tide. Prine's plates dim, as if embarrassed to be seen naked. The wheel in his hand resists him for the first time, not by machine law, but by presence. Prine looks at her with real curiosity. What are you when you are not a whole? She does not answer. She is a whole. That is enough. Vogue circles left, Holt right. There are two knives, one serrated with zeal, one polished with precedent. Prine keeps his posture measured. He does not reach for a weapon. He reaches for a parchment and holds it out like surrender. Sign, he says. A joint authority protocol. You control the ring's conscience. I control its timing. We save 20%. Holt glances at the parchment. Her jaw works. It is tempting because it is almost true. How many souls become variables? She asks, not expecting honesty and getting it anyway. Children under 5 are exempt, Prine says, since he is proud of that clause. So are men who can carry stretchers. The inefficient. Vogue moves. She does not leap. She steps to Prine's elbow and touches the wheel. By Terra sanction, with a sister witness, she says. She speaks in a voice trained only for confession and execution orders. Shut down. The wheel goes cold. Prine looks at it and at her hand, astonished that an authority older than his checklists exists in this room. Holt flips a switch under a hex plate, something only a bureaucrat would think to check. The plate power browns. A relay stumbles. All across the crown, plates waiting to be born go back to being parts. Prine pulls in a breath that is more grief than rage. You will let them die. We let no one die, Holt says. We let them breathe. There is a sequence here that saves months and lives. It starts with you moving. He moves, because a sister's gaze and 2 inquisitors' guns make a choreography simple. On the ground, the last of the first wave of plates has been scraped into a pile beside a null. Hospitallers pour water over them. The water hisses, smelling of ink and ash. Children come out from under tables. A man drops a sack of bolts and catches it with surprised hands because he didn't expect to be allowed to keep anything this neat and heavy. Alvarez stands on a tram line and watches a sky that is not dropping more neat problems. He tastes oil and copper and breathes through his nose. Lines hold, he says. Don't read red. Don't sign anything that nails itself down. A second wave of objects streaks out from Brian's ship. The fallback plan. They are not plates. They are darts, each one a neat needle dripping with a definition. They aim for the ring, not the ground. Janus, Kate says. Duck. The ring cannot duck. It can twist a degree inside its cradle. Cade swivels the lattice vector and opens a slit like a mouth that only breathes long enough to cough. The darts hit the slit and pass through into a bucket of hume that is a little more than it should be. They lose their definitions and fall as iron rain onto a dead field far from the city. Prine watches his last line fail. He looks at the sister. He looks at Holt. He looks at Vogue. He straightens his collar. For the record, he says, voice steady. I optimized. Noted, Vogue says, and arrests him with a signet's touch on his wrist. It burns neat. He winces and bows his head and makes a note of his own. The loss is instructive. The crown's hum downgrades from compulsion to sulk. The rose window unbinds its edges reluctantly. The blackstone shivers in a way that is not demonic. It is tired of clever men. Cut him loose, Holt says to the fleet. Strip the crown off. Tow him to a pen where men write with ash. The Magnificat answers with a slow turn of guns toward Menace's leverage and then away, restraint writ large and public. The choir hums a blessing with no words. You did not sing wrong today. Janus lights, not brighter, truer. The ring rotates and shows a thin new sigil burned onto one facet, a minuscule aquila stamped above a triple arrow circle, no larger than a thumbprint on a wrench. It is not the Imperium eating a symbol. It is a shared mark where levers touch law. Ashur stands at the viewport and feels something purge in her chest like smoke leaving a room that insisted on being a study. Holt steps to her side, mouth a thin, firm line. Under this leash, Holt says, as if reading the discomfort out of her bones and answering it, you are less efficient. You're more human. I can live with that. I can defend that in a room where men like Prine take numbers like sun. Boundaries, Vogue says, arriving with a sister like a shadow with warmth. Say them for the record. Ashur does. Janus operates only under named local authority, with a null witness and a commander to be blamed. Overlap caps unless a null stands at the seam. No mimetic channels by light. Voice and ink only, hand to hand. No redefinition of civilian without sovereign signature and sister assent. No suppression of prayer or liturgy under any cost curve. If ambiguity rises, mercy resolves. Favor breath, favor children, favor hands holding other hands. After 3 days, all housings get remapped to local dials and labels. If we leave, the anchors we leave behind are yours. No kill switch. Clause, Holt adds coolly. You submit anomaly class objects native to this Imperium to the Ordo's vaults once their bleed stops. You don't carry our devils away like souvenirs. Clause accepted, Ashur says, with inventories signed by witnesses who are not ours and not yours alone. Vogue nods one. Acceptance and warning. You bleed with us, you heal with us, and you burn with us if the tally grows wrong. Understood, Ashur says. The ring hums the leash back to itself like a song it remembers now and will not mistake for a mandate to sing alone. Prine's crown is stripped with a sound like knives coming out of a drawer slowly. The blackstone plates go into polite boxes, guarded by men with no interest in optimization and people who love to hit things with hammers. Prine goes into a cell that is very clean. He will write a book on what he learned, and nobody will read it unless the throne says learn this again later, under better watchers. Graia exhales. Alpha 3 smokes beside a null and tells her a joke in Binharik. She doesn't smile, which pleases him because he didn't want the joke to be good. He wanted to make a sound that wasn't orders. Cade loosens his bandage and studies the hive map scab, then laughs, quiet, joyful, tired, and wraps it tighter again, because opening wounds on purpose is for surgeons and poets, and he is neither. Jindal sits on a step with a child and teaches him a game where you draw letters ugly on purpose so they can't be used against you. Orin wins by drawing a fish that looks like a shoe. Lisa takes the plate scrap and hammers it flat into a tray, because you can carry bread on something that once tried to carry orders into your life. In the vault at the edge of the city, a machine's eyes open fully. It stands up out of its cradle like a man remembering how to walk after a long illness. A sister and a tech priest watch. It bows to the sister and taps the tech priest's wrench with a finger. "Orders?" it asks, voice like a fan. The sister shakes her head. "Witness," she says. The machine implies a nod and walks out into the light to be useful without becoming a priest. The war council is leaner, fewer voices, better breath. "Today we used a leash to kill a whip," Vogue says. "Tomorrow we will use a candle to watch men with levers. The day after, someone clever will come with a mirror we haven't seen. We will still be here. The word bearers will return," Jindal says, wiping her eyes with a knuckle and laughing, because crying now feels like air. They'll bring a palimpsest full of counter letters with sweet breath and knives. "Malphor will write again," Cade mutters. "He'll bring a new stamp that finds our margin notes. We can ignore better. We can learn slower. Prine will have acolytes," Holt says. "Men who think love is a checklist. I will hurt them before they optimize, and I will do it inside the leash so my knife stays a tool." Ashur looks out at the city, humming in its bruised rhythm, and says the only prayer she ever needed. "We protect people. Contain," Vogue says. "Secure," Holt adds. "Wry because the order doesn't matter anymore." The clause does. The ring turns slowly like a crown set on the head of a man who is not a king and tries not to become one. On one facet, the small aquila over the triple arrow circle winks like an eye catching gold. They set terms with the governor and the mechanicus. 2 anchor pods stay. They are baptized in oil and ash. Dials wear little painted birds and arrows. Manuals show thumbs, not words. Children press hands to housings that hum back the right temperature. Alive. The sister walks the seams at evening, bruise fading to parchment yellow. She stands in place until the air decides to behave, then leaves and does it again, a litany of not doing. A boy follows at a careful distance and copies her breathing. He will not become a psyker, or he will, but he will know the comfort of a room that can be made quiet by will. They do funerals, not numbers, names. Men with old hands ring bells and women with tired shoulders pour water and say nothing when words would steal breath from someone who needs it for the next day. The Magnificat folds its guns and paints another line inside its memory of when not to fire. The choir hums a note that makes nurses' hands steady. The chaste edict files a memo titled Provisional, How to Leash a Miracle Without Recommending a Noose. Janus points her ring to the next fire she can smell through a tangle of void. Vogue signs a paper with her name ugly and legible. Holt countersigns and writes a line a demon cannot read because it is too simple. Love is permission with a witness. They lift. The city shrinks to a pattern of honest light. A last Vox rides the updraft. It is a child. "We breathed," Orin says into a soldier's mic. Solemn. "You did," Alvarez answers, voice gone soft around its edges. "Keep doing it." The galaxy does not notice. Then it does, later, in places where doors have been slammed too long. A rumor of a ring that does not speak and still tells the world to be honest. Spreads like a mathematical song hummed by men who cannot read and therefore cannot be fooled by neat grammar. The rumour carries a new sigil, a tiny aquila weighing down a circle of 3 arrows, painted with oil by hands that greeted saints yesterday. On a prayer ship in the eye, a dark apostle writes a new gospel that rhymes with glass and legal ink. He leaves a blank page where a mirror goes. He writes Malphor in red and stares at the letters until they look like love. He vows to arrive where the leash is frayed. In a cell on the chaste edict, Prine kneels and tells the ceiling he was right. The ceiling ignores him. He writes anyway. He plans Form 27B, Joint Operational Conscience. He will convince someone kinder than Holt someday. He will be watched. On Terra, a bell tolls once, not for warning, not for sanction, for memory. Men on far deck straighten without knowing why and make a choice not to be neat when neat will kill. Janus hums the leash like a lullaby taught by a dead god's chair. Her fuel chart is a scold. Her crew is tired enough to be honest without pride as a mask. They set a next vector because fires prefer to be in company. And in the viewport's reflection, Dr. Rhea Ashur, who is not a king, not a cleric, not a god, sees the cheap miracle she will get to keep. A city that learned a breathing pattern and taught it forward. She nods to herself. She does not say amen. She checks the dials painted with little birds and arrows and says, again. The arc holds and moves.